Chapter 26:01. Your Mu family came at the right time, Arbor said coldly, directly taking the list from Eunuch Chen's hands and flinging it in front of Mu Xingqian and the others. The Mu family has a large business, so you should be able to gather the things immediately. In the evening, I'll send someone to collect them. Don't leave out a single thing on the list. Otherwise, I'll teach you a lesson. After saying that, he jumped down from the armchair and walked towards the door with small steps. Mu Jingxing and Mu Jingyuan finally witnessed the little girl's indifference for the first time. Recalling Mu Xingqian's previous words, they couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Sure enough, this was the Mu family. Even if they were lying on the streets, she wouldn't give them a second glance. Jojo, can we have a good talk? Mu Xingqian glanced bitterly at the little girl and reached out to block her path. Arbor stopped in his tracks, his expression calm as he looked at Mu Xingqian as if he was looking at an ordinary stranger. The Emperor's decree, that's what I meant. Arbor openly admitted it, a faint trace of coldness flitting through the depths of his eyes. I want your Mu family to be in a terrible fix, and I want you to be unable to live a good life. Mu Jingxing glanced speechlessly at the little girl. Jojo, right? Mu Jingxing coughed lightly and said, I'm your second uncle, Mu Jingxing. This is your third uncle, Mu Jingyuan. Arbor glanced indifferently at the two. He had no intention of greeting them, nor did he express much welcome. Mu Jingyuan stepped forward and said, Jojo, how are you doing on Seacombe Planet? How is eldest sister-in-law now? Arbor looked deeply at him. From earlier until now, this person didn't seem to be bothered by the Mu family's imperial decree at all. Instead, he kept asking about her own situation. I am useless. I couldn't find you and your mother all these years. Mu Jingyuan hurriedly said, Third uncle didn't know that you and your mother would actually run to a lower star domain like Seacombe Planet. Arbor raised his hand to stop him from speaking. The past is the past. There's no use in saying this now. Yes. Mu Jingyuan hurriedly nodded and said, Jojo, don't come back if you don't want to. If you need anything, just tell third uncle. OL3. Mu Jingxing was even more speechless. Was this old third a fool? If Mu Qiao, this little girl, did not return to the Mu family, would the great emperor let their family off? He was now thinking the same thing as the elders. They all felt that the great emperor had purposely issued this decree. The reason must be that if the crown princess was just a small village girl who came out of a small mountain village on Seacombe Planet, then her status was definitely a little low. If the crown princess had the Mu family as her backing, then it was still acceptable in front of the various aristocratic families and courtiers. After all, by then, the crown princess would also have the background of a noble lady. The great emperor was forcing the Mu clan to admit it. Even if they didn't want to, they had to admit this little girl. How would Mu Jingxing know that the great emperor was forcing them? It was clearly the couple who forced him to issue this nonsensical imperial edict. If the great emperor knew what Mu Jingxing was thinking, he would definitely laugh at him. Mu Jingxing stepped forward and said to Arbor, Jojo, don't be willful anymore. Come back with us. I know that the matter of concubine bringing back the fake goods previously made you very unhappy. But this matter has been completely resolved now. Chapter 26:02. Our Mu family has already officially announced this to the world, Mu Jingxing said with a smile. You don't have to worry about that fake ruining your reputation. You can rest assured about this. Arbor coldly glanced at him. It's not impossible for me to return. Mu Jingxing was slightly delighted when he heard this, and he immediately revealed a smile. Jojo, go ahead. A wooden smile slid across Arbor's lips, as if a cut had been made on a piece of wood. There wasn't a trace of a smile in his eyes, and it was rather frightening to look at. Mu Jingxing's gaze hardened, and his heart subconsciously sank. Have your Mu family's current madam, lead, eldest miss, and all the Mu family's womenfolk, starting from your Mu residence, count out 3 times and count out 9 times, then kneel and welcome my mother at Le Sheng Gate. The Mu estate will open its main doors to welcome me and my mother. Also, open the ancestral hall for me. You don't need to know why, just do as I say. This is my request. If you can do it, I'll return. If you can't, Your entire family can just wait for death. Don't think that the great emperor is joking. Your heads are all hanging there. If you can't do it, I'll watch you one by one die." Arbor coldly said these words. That voice was like being fished up from the depths of the Yellow Springs, so cold that it sent chills down one's spine. It was so serene that it made one shiver uncontrollably. Mu Jingxing couldn't help but rage in his eyes. "You, don't talk nonsense with me. I also don't want to listen to your nonsense." Arbor coldly waved his hand and turned to walk out the door. "These are my conditions. Do you want pride or your life? Choose for yourself." Mu Jingxing's anger burst forth. At this moment, he truly understood how his eldest brother, Mu Jingfeng, felt when he didn't want to acknowledge this daughter. If it were him, he also didn't want to acknowledge her. How could there be such an infuriating person? "Second uncle." Mu Xingqian grabbed his arm, calming him down. When he looked up again, he saw that the little girl had already drifted out the door and left. "Otherwise, don't blame me for sending the purple forest guard to your door to take it." Mu Jingxing was so angry that his entire body was trembling. He glanced at old Third, who was standing at the side, and could not help but say angrily, You're still laughing. What are you laughing at? If sister-in-law had such a temper back then, she wouldn't have been so angry that she left home, right?" Mu Xingqian frowned and said, "Third uncle, she chose to leave on her own. The Mu family didn't force her." "Huh." Mu Jingyuan shook his head and glanced at Mu Xingqian. "You believe what your father says? Don't you know your father's attitude towards Jojo now? How much credibility do you think his words have?" "Third brother," Mu Jingxing said angrily. "No matter what, eldest brother is still eldest brother. He's the head of the Mu family. Pay attention to your words and attitude." Mu Jingyuan sneered and didn't reply. He flicked his sleeves and left as well. Seeing his attitude, Mu Jingxing was so angry that he stomped his feet. He turned to Mu Xingqian and asked, "Xingqian, what should we do about this? I think you're serious." Of course I know she's serious. This disobedient and unfilial thing. What she meant was that she wanted your mother to bring her younger sister, as well as the entire family of womenfolk, and go to Lushengmin to pick them up. What in? Mu Jingxing was furious. "This concerns our entire Mu family's reputation. I won't agree to this." Mu Xingqian laughed self-mockingly. "You won't agree? If you don't agree, then go die. Didn't she say so?" Chapter 26:03. Mu Jingxing was momentarily at a loss for words as he glared at Mu Xingqian. "Xingqian, can't you go and persuade her? Did you see her look at me just now? Did she want to talk to me?" Mu Xingqian hung his head dejectedly and walked out dejectedly. "Let's go back first. We still have to gather those supplies first." "What?" Mu Jingxing jumped out at once and picked up the list on the floor, almost smashing it to pieces with a slap. Mu Xingqian snatched it over and held it in his hand. "I don't think little sister is just joking. She'll really send someone to collect the supplies at 10 o'clock in the evening. If you don't want the Mu family to lose even more face, then do it. So many things. On what basis?" Mu Jingxing originally came with his third brother, Mu Jingyuan, to build a good relationship with Arbor, but who knew that this fellow would be so infuriating? At this moment, Mu Jingxing was already fuming with anger. His initial plan to get along with the little lass had long been tossed out of the highest heavens. Half an hour later, the two returned to the Mu family, presented the list, and recounted the matter. Of course, it infuriated all the elders. The Mu family's fifth son, Mu Jingyang, was the most impatient. He slammed the table and angrily said, "I'll go slaughter this rebellious little bastard. She actually dares to make such a request? Fifth uncle, if you hurt a hair on my sister's head, I won't let you off," Mu Xingqian angrily said. Mu Jingyang resentfully smacked his lips. "I was just saying. Why are you so anxious with me? You can't even say it." Mu Xingqian was furious. Mu Jingyang pursed his lips and angrily sat back down. Mu Jingfeng silently sat at the head of the table and did not speak for a long time. "Family head, we'll do whatever you say. You definitely can't agree to this matter. On what basis should Madam bring eldest miss to welcome her with 3 meals and 9 kowtows. Eldest Miss is one of the most outstanding talisman masters in our Mu family's younger generation. She can't be humiliated like this. Right? Right. Everyone discussed animatedly, and for a moment, they were all filled with righteous indignation. Mu Xingqian sneered, "Sure, but the result is death." With Mu Xingqian's words, everyone quieted down. He also thought of the great emperor's imperial edict. It was written clearly on the imperial edict that if they did not bring this little ancestor back within 5 days and prove her identity to the world, their entire family would be executed. Everyone took a deep breath and sighed heavily. They all turned their eyes to Patriarch Mu. The Mu family head was silent for a while before he said, "First, prepare all the materials on the list." Everyone felt their teeth ache when they heard this. Elder Qing couldn't help but say angrily, "Patriarch, if we take out all the materials on this list, 1/5 of the entire Mu family's property will be taken out. Just these resources are already 1/5 of the total." Mu Jingyuan couldn't help but mock. Then the entire Mu family, the accumulation of thousands of years of aristocratic families, is too cheap. Elder Qing's face reddened, and he was at a loss for words. This slap to the face was really quite a slap. Mu Jingyuan coldly said, "Humph, you can't bear to take out just these few materials? Jojo has been wandering outside for so many years, not having enough to eat or wear. Who knows what kind of life the mother and daughter have been living? I think just these are really too little." Chapter 26:04. Mu Jingyuan, are you crazy? Fifth Mu Jingyang said angrily. Our Mu family is so big. It's not like you don't know how many cultivation resources are distributed to each disciple in the family. Taking out so much at once, and it's only for a little girl. Who can accept that? Mu Jingyuan sneered. Then why don't you give it to her? You're afraid that the Purple Forest Guard will personally come to take it. What's the use of saying all this nonsense? Mu Jingyang was so angry that smoke was coming out of his nostrils. He pointed at Mu Jingyuan and said you for a long time before resentfully flinging his hand down. All right, stop arguing. Mu Jingfeng said calmly. Go and prepare these resources. Put them at the door and wait for her to take them. Can the Mu family afford to give these things back? Everyone felt like vomiting blood in their hearts. Elder Qing was even more unconvinced. I'd like to know why the Mu family is compensating her. Isn't it because of yesterday's incident at Despondent Pavilion? Did those blind brats from the Long family, Gu family, and Sure family offend her and His Highness the Crown Prince? These families have all given compensation to each of them. As for our Mu family, she said that our Mu family's management was chaotic and offended her, so she insisted that we compensate. The Long family? The Long family also gave compensation? Mu Jingyang asked in astonishment. Isn't the Long family her maternal family? What kind of maternal family is that? Mu Jingyuan sneered coldly. That family is merely a side branch of the Long family. It has nothing to do with sister-in-law. Moreover, I don't believe that they didn't add fuel to the fire behind the scenes back then. Jingyuan, don't spout nonsense. Mu Jingfeng coldly glanced at Mu Jingyuan. Back then, your sister-in-law insisted on leaving. It has nothing to do with us. Why did sister-in-law leave? Don't you know? Mu Jingyuan glared at Mu Jingfeng mockingly. If you didn't mix around with that woman, Jingyuan, Mu Jingfeng glared at him coldly. The latter sneered and stood up to walk out the door. Third brother Yin, third brother. Sixth brother Mu Jingshua smiled awkwardly at everyone. He pointed outside and said, I'll go persuade him. Then he ran out like a wisp of smoke. This third bro is getting more and more outrageous. Mu Jingyang snorted. Mu Jingfeng's gaze was calm, as though he was not affected by this matter at all. He calmly said, Fourth, I'll leave the matter of gathering and preparing the supplies to you. Make sure it's done before nightfall. Yes, big brother. Mu Jingshao nodded and did not express any opinion. In any case, he just had to follow his boss's orders. As for the rest, it was not something that a bastard like him could control. Big brother, that girl Mu Qiao said to have sister-in-law bring eldest niece along to kneel 3 times and kowtow 9 times? Mu Jingxing looked awkwardly at his eldest brother, Mu Jingfeng. He always felt that this matter had evolved to become the first branch's family affair. Don't bother about it. How can we not care? Mu Jingyong panicked again. Big brother, it's not that I want to say this, but that daughter of yours who was left outside is very formidable. It doesn't feel like she's lying. If we don't make sister-in-law and eldest niece kneel, I feel like she won't let this matter rest. Mu Jingfeng coldly said, is she worthy? After all, she's a crown princess now. Worthy? She could be considered worthy. Chapter 2605. Mu Jingfeng waved his hand, looking a little tired as he dismissed the crowd. Elder Qing and the rest still wanted to persuade him, but when they saw his cold gaze, they could not help but sigh and shrink their necks as they walked out. Xingqian, you stay. Mu Xingqian sat in front of him and did not speak for a long time. Mu Jingfeng looked at him and asked, Xingqian, do you think she's doing the right thing? Although your mother isn't your biological mother, she painstakingly raised you all these years. When did she not do her best to take care of you when you were sick and bedridden? There's also your sister Xian. She respects you the most. Mu Xingqian remained silent. I know you've always been aloof, but you're not someone who can't tell good from bad. You must be able to feel that your mother and sister treat you with sincerity, don't you? Father, what are you trying to say? Go and persuade your sister. I'm willing to accept her home. Mu Jingfeng pinched the space between his brows, looking exhausted. But there's no need for 3 kowtows and 9 kowtows. She's so young. How could she receive so many bows from the Mu family's elders? There are more than 100 womenfolk in the Mu family. Do you want her grandmother to kneel as well? Mu Xingqian remained silent. Father, if the Mu family didn't have such an attitude from the start, things wouldn't have come to this. If the Mu family didn't bring that imposter home from the start, she wouldn't have been completely enraged. Father, don't you think it's hard for you to absolve yourself of the blame now that things have come to this? Mu Jingfeng's eyes finally moved. He looked up and coldly gazed at his son. Xingqian, you were born and raised in this family. Your achievements today are inseparable from the Mu family's nurturing. You should also know that if this family is really suppressed by that rebellious daughter, the entire family and thousands of family members will be implicated. Mu Xingqian looked at him coldly, not saying a word or expressing any opinion. Father, do you think my words will be of any use? How is it useless? You're siblings and are connected by blood. You said yourself that you'll feel the resonance of your bloodline when you walk to her side. Mu Xingqian sneered mockingly. So what? In her eyes, I might not even be as good as a dog on the street. Xingqian, Mu Jingfeng slammed the table in anger. Why do you have to belittle yourself like this? What I said is the truth. Mu Xingqian only felt extremely bitter in his heart. You didn't see her expression when she said those words to us in Despondent Pavilion. She said that it's up to us to choose whether we want pride or our lives. She'll be waiting to see us die one by one. Unfilial daughter. Mu Jingfeng finally showed his anger. He slammed the table heavily, and the teacup on the table jumped up with a kick sound. Mu Xingqian looked coldly at his father and did not continue speaking. From a moment ago until now, he was like a wandering soul, wandering the world. Was he sad? She was heartbroken, all right? His heart was so uncomfortable that it felt like someone was using a blunt knife to cut it bit by bit. He had the illusion that he wanted to cry, but he couldn't. She was his only sister in the world, who was related to him by blood. Yet, she hated their family to the bone. Mu Xingqian walked out of the door in a daze. He did not know when, but his extremely cold tears had fallen. Chapter 2606. After strolling around Changle Boulevard, Xiaomu bought a few bits and pieces of snacks. When she returned to Lishing Gate, she saw the crown prince galloping out on a fast horse. The little fellow hastily poked her head out of the carriage and waved at him. Lien, Emo Yin had already seen her carriage. She hastily dismounted and quickly jumped into the carriage. What did you run off to? Prince Emo pulled her over with a displeased expression and rubbed her head. His father had caught him and given him a lecture. When he finally managed to break free and return to the Eastern Palace, he discovered that his wife had disappeared. The The Crown Prince immediately thought of the rainbow flowers that filled the entire building in spring. He felt that the little girl must have gone to Jade Tripod Market to take a look out of curiosity. After all, the little girl did show a trace of interest that night, didn't she? Where did she go? Jojo. To collect debts. Arbor took out a list from his sleeve and flung it out for the Crown Prince to see. Look, this is the compensation I asked the Mu family for. I had them prepare it before evening. Emollien's mouth twitched as she flipped through the list. There were all sorts of medicinal pills and spirit tools on this list. Sir Jojo had even extorted a batch of talismans from them. Actually, she didn't lack any of these things. What she wanted was to make the Mu family vomit blood when we bring these things back, reward them to Hui Feng and Tong. They've been working quite hard recently. Emollien couldn't help but laugh. She nodded and said, okay. Whatever Jojo said was good. If these resources were rewarded to Hui Feng and the others, they would probably be happy for several days. After all, just the medicinal pills for cultivation alone would be enough for them to eat for a while. We have a lot of people to take care of. If we distribute the Mu family's compensation, there won't be much left in everyone's hands. Arbor said in all seriousness, we still have to earn more compensation. Emollien almost died from laughter. She nodded when she heard that. Jojo is so smart. A certain person nodded in agreement. She also felt that her trick of getting something for nothing was pretty good. Jojo. Emollien reached out and hugged her. Since we're out, why don't we go out for dinner? All right. I heard that there's a famous Kaidai veranda in your sovereign capital. Do you want to try it? All right. Emollien squeezed her little hand and had the coachman turn around, heading towards Kaidai Pavilion. When it came to eating, Arbor was quite happy. Eating is a must in life. She just didn't know if the famous Kaidai veranda, which was the talk of the town in the imperial capital, was as delicious as its name implied. When the two of them arrived at the entrance of Kaidai Pavilion, they saw a long queue in front of the shop. The little fellow got out of the car, curiously, and looked around. Then, he took Emollien's hand and walked towards the door. There was a small service counter at the entrance of Kaidai Pavilion. Two smiling women stood in front of it. When they saw the guests, they bowed and said, "How many guests are there?" "2. You'll have to wait for a while. Take your number plate and have a seat over there. There are some refreshments there for everyone." The little girl looked curious. Is your business that good? Could all of these people be fake? It wasn't even time for lunch yet. Why was there such a long queue at the entrance? Looking at the other restaurants, none of them had such good business. This was simply too rare. The receptionist smiled and said, "Our Kaidai veranda is very different from other restaurants." Chapter 26:07. Our main line this winter is growing vegetables and beautifying dishes. These dishes can't be found in restaurants or tea houses outside. Jojo replied with an "oh," and immediately felt that this restaurant was a bit magical. They actually placed many tables and chairs outside the door for the people in line to rest and eat some fruits and snacks. There were indeed quite a number of people gathered here. Do we have to wait? Emollien pulled at her side and asked. The little fellow's eyes darted around before she shook her head and said, "No. No matter how good the dishes were, they weren't worth her and the Crown Prince waiting here for half a day after waiting in such a long line." She immediately felt that her interest was waning. The Crown Prince nodded. "Then let's go eat somewhere else." Arbor replied with an and turned around with Prince Emo leading her. When the two were walking towards the carriage, they saw a few familiar faces walking over. Oh, did the Mu family go on a trip together today? They had just sent away a group when another group came over. Of course, it looked like the Mu family was also heading to Kaidai restaurant to eat, so they probably bumped into each other by coincidence. Mu Rochuan was also stunned when she saw Arbor. Before she could speak, Mu Ruyan beside her jumped up like a hedgehog. "Why are you here?" Mu Ruyan was too familiar with this stoic-faced young lady. So familiar that she couldn't deny it even if she wanted to. She still remembered the humiliation she suffered on the Langfang boat. Just thinking about it made her angry. A sinister glint surfaced in Mu Ruyan's eyes as she stared fixedly at Arbor's face. If it weren't for her eldest sister stopping her with a cold expression, Murian would have long rushed up with the servants to beat up that stoic-faced young lady. She still remembered that her eldest brother was defeated by this stoic-faced young lady. Her eldest brother was even slapped by this damned stoic-faced young lady. Who did she think she was to dare lay a hand on the Mu family? Previously at Langfang, she couldn't kill her alone. Now that they were in the imperial capital, she had the Mu family as her powerful backing. Wasn't it a simple matter to kill this little bitch with a single sentence? Eldest miss, second miss, why did you stop here and not leave? A smiling young man ran over. He seemed to be a disciple of the Mu clan. His attitude towards the two of them was very respectful. Mu-He hit her. Mu-Ro-Yin raised her chin and scolded. The youth named Mu-He was stunned. He turned to look at the stoic face, but before he could do anything, he was stopped by Mu-Ro-Xuan's indifferent shout. Stop it! Mu-Ro-Xian glared at Mu-Ro-Yin. Don't go around causing trouble. Don't forget what we are here for. Mu-Ro-Yan's arrogance instantly soared. Yes, I'm accompanying Big Sister to wait for the invitation today. As he spoke, the corners of his mouth curled up, and he looked towards Arbor with a mocking sneer. My elder sister is going to become a student of the royal school this spring. Mu-Ro-Yin didn't deliberately lower her voice, so everyone around them heard it. At this moment, they were in an uproar and looked at the sisters with envy. Mu-Ro-Yin felt honored, as if the person who received the invitation to the imperial school was her, Mu-Ro-Yin. What imperial school? Darling Xiao expressed that she had never heard of it. Emol-Yin lowered her head and saw the little fellow blinking her eyes with a curious expression. Her heart softened as she raised her hand to pull her to her side and said, Don't mind it. Arbor was still curious. Is it a very powerful school? Chapter 26:08. More impressive than our top-notch academy. If any of the 6 prefectures' academies were here, they would definitely be unable to resist ridiculing her. How is your lousy, top-notch academy impressive? Emol-Yin's lips twitched as she nodded and said, Your top-notch academy is still impressive. Darling Xiao instantly said matter-of-factly, As expected, our principal Yunfei is still very impressive. Emol-Yin, on the side, Mu-Ro-Yan's face contorted slightly, and she couldn't resist snickering. We've never even heard of your so-called top-notch academy. What kind of place do you think the Royal Academy is? It's the most famous academy in the 3 provinces. It was founded by the combined funds of our Divine Province, Song Province, and Ming Province. A large group of the 3 provinces' top-notch teachers are gathered inside. Also, there are countless geniuses inside. All of them are the 3 provinces' most famous geniuses. Xiao Mian expressionlessly looked at the boastful Mu-Ro-Yin with a stoic face. You're inside? Those geniuses are either talisman experts or top-notch cultivators. Then there are weapon and pill refinement masters. An academy where all kinds of elites gather. Mu-Ro-Yan's face contorted slightly. Of course I'm not inside. I freaking thought you were inside. You were blushing like a fool, but it turns out you're not inside. The little stoic speechlessly glanced at her and shooed her away like a fly. Then why are you blabbering nonsense with me? Everyone, Mu-Ro-Yin shrieked in exasperation. My elder sister is inside. You are you, and your elder sister is your elder sister. Arbor grumpily said, Get out of the way, a good dog doesn't block the way. Mu-Ro-Yin was about to go crazy from anger. She shrieked and ordered Mu-He, hit her. If she dies or maims, it's on me. Mu-He hesitated. Just as he was hesitating, the little girl charged over like a primitive leopard. Fuck, Emol-Yin didn't even have time to hug her. The little girl shot in front of Mu-Ro-Yin like a cannonball. She held a washboard horizontally in her hand and slapped it heavily at Mu-Ro-Yin's head. Slap! Mu-Ro-Yin shockingly discovered that she was sent flying. Her entire body was like a piece of rotten tofu as she was sent flying and landed heavily on the ground. 2 pairs of black boots with golden threads suddenly appeared in her vision. Only then did Mu-Ro-Yin spit out a mouthful of blood. Her face was covered in blood as she raised her head in a sorry state. With one look, her heart was completely shattered. Wasn't this her beloved fifth young master? Why did the fifth young master suddenly appear here and see her in such a disgraceful state? Ah! Ah! Mu Royan shrieked. She frantically wiped away the blood from her nose as she struggled to stand up. Ah! Fifth young master, don't look at my face, don't look. Just as Mu Royan was desperately trying to cover her face, the Qin estate's fifth young master indifferently walked past her. Sorry, fifth young master didn't even look at your face. You're the only one who's talking nonsense. Mu Rochuan was so angry that her chest was about to explode. She must have been out of her mind to bring this stupid second sister to Kaidai Pavilion for a meal. She was about to faint from anger. It was one thing for her second sister to make a fool of herself, but she had also brought shame to her grandmother. She simply didn't know what to say. She couldn't win, yet she was still blindly talking nonsense. It was better for people to know their own limits. Otherwise, they would only be asking for humiliation. Chapter 26:09. Mu Rochuan took a deep breath. Just as she was about to speak, she heard a low and elegant chuckle. I say, little Jojo really hasn't changed at all. Still so violent. Arbor expressionlessly looked at the grinning man who ran to him with a flourish of his sleeves. Why did someone from the Qin estate run over? How annoying. Little Jojo silently turned her head away from eldest Qin and pattered to the crown prince's side. Prince Emo restrained the smile on his lips and said to her in all seriousness, Jojo, let's go eat at the festive restaurant next door. Okay. The little fellow nodded and turned to ask Mu Rochuan, this is your Mu clan's property? Mu Rochuan didn't expect this stoic-faced girl to speak to her. After a momentary daze, she nodded. Yes. Oh. Little Jojo didn't say anything else. She turned around and saw eldest young Sir Qin approach her with a grin. Jojo, you're truly heartless. Why are you ignoring me? I don't know you at all. Emo Lien irritably pulled the little fellow to the other side and blocked eldest Qin's face with her arm. Scram, Your Highness the Crown Prince, it's not right of you to say that. Eldest young Sir Qin bit his lip pitifully. In any case, Jojo and I are old friends who came from Seacombe Planet together. Of course, I have to come and greet an old friend in a foreign land. Don't you think so, Jojo? Standing behind eldest young Sir Qin, the fifth young Sir revealed a trace of astonishment and asked coldly, Eldest brother, you know her? HM. Eldest young Sir Qin detected a trace of confusion in the fifth young Sir's words, so he turned to ask him, What? You also know the little stoic? Fifth young Sir Qin coldly swept the little stoic a glance and said aloofly, I don't know her. Sir Jojo was immediately a bit angry. Don't know your sister. He didn't expect that only Sir Jojo would disdain someone, but now, this youth would disdain her? This young man had a cold face and a serious expression. Just looking at him was extremely annoying. Jojo ignored him and turned to look at Mo Lien. Let's go. The Qin family is a bunch of ingrates. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have saved that fifth young master. One ungrateful fellow. Mr. Jojo waved his hand angrily. He hooked his arm around Mo Lien's finger and walked towards the festive restaurant. She wasn't that curious about Kaidai brothel. Wasn't it the same to eat at the festive restaurant next door? Jojo, don't run. Eldest young Sir Qin hastily blocked their path with a flash and said to the Crown Prince merrily, Your Highness Crown Prince, this Qin has reserved a private room at Kaidai Pavilion. Since the two of you are so fated to meet, how about this Qin host a welcoming dinner for the two of you? The little fellow's expressionless face was taut. She originally wanted to sternly refuse. The Crown Prince raised his hand to pat her head and nodded reluctantly. All right, if it weren't for the fact that the little fellow was truly curious about this Kaidai brothel, he wouldn't have eaten with eldest young Sir Qin. Although Sir Jojo didn't say anything, his mood improved. Eldest young Sir Qin's gaze flickered, and he said with a smile, This way, please. The fifth young Sir didn't say anything and silently followed behind the trio towards Kaidai brothel. Mui helped the disheveled Mu Ro Yin up with great difficulty. When she saw Arbor's figure walking in, she shrieked, Who allowed her to go in? Stop her. This lunatic dared to enter their Kaidai brothel after beating her up like this. Chapter 26:10. Ro Yin. Mu Rochuan irritably shouted at her. Mu Ro Yin turned to look at her in astonishment. Return first. Mu Rochuan's gaze chilled, and she coldly instructed the two maidservants behind her. You two must escort second Miss back properly. Yes, eldest Mississippi. Mu Ro Yin was still unconvinced, and she stiffened her neck and shouted at Mu Rochuan. Eldest sister, I was humiliated by that woman on the streets and suffered such serious injuries. Yet you're actually making me return? No way. Shut up. Mu Rochuan was simply about to be angered to death by this idiot. Didn't she hear that eldest young Sir Chin respectfully address him as His Highness the Crown Prince just now? How long did this Mu Ro you want to kick up a fuss for? Couldn't she use her brain a bit when she went out to do things? Mu Rochuan didn't want to waste any more words with her and directly waved her hand, gesturing for the two strong maidservants to pull Mu Ro Yin back to the Mu estate. Afterwards, Mu Rochuan looked up at her Kaidai veranda's gold-lettered door lintel and walked inside with light steps. Arbor ordered a table full of dishes, and after ordering, he saw the fifth young sir looking at him coldly. You can eat so much. How did this woman develop such a temperament? When she treated his illness back then, she swindled and cheated as much as she could. She was simply a shameless person. You're footing the bill? I'll pay. Eldest young Sir Chin hastily said with a smile and glanced at his younger brother. Fifth brother, do you know each other? If he still couldn't tell that these two people knew each other now, then he really was eldest young Sir Chin for nothing. The atmosphere between these two people wasn't too harmonious from the moment they met. He didn't know when his fifth brother got acquainted with the little stoic. It was truly quite rare to find someone who could gain the little stoic's approval. However, there were truly quite a few people who the little stoic disliked. It seemed like he was one of them. Eldest young Sir Chin rubbed his nose. Fifth young Sir Chin humped coldly and didn't say anything, shifting his gaze outside the window. Knock, knock. Someone lightly knocked on the door. Eldest young Sir Chin indicated for his personal page boy to open the door. Mu Rochuan's gentle and dignified face was revealed when the door opened. Your Highness the Crown Prince, Crown Princess. Eldest young master. Fifth young master. I hope I'm not disturbing you? It's quite a bother, Arbor replied faintly. Everyone was speechless. Fifth young Sir Chin turned his head to glare at the little stoic and thought, would it kill you to speak properly? He didn't know what capabilities this little stoic possessed to make his eldest brother regard her so highly. The Crown Princess. Who would have thought that the junior physician he met at Langfang would be the one who caused everyone's expressions to change at the mention of the Crown Princess in the imperial capital? Mu Rochuan didn't mind the awkwardness as she walked in and said with a smile, the Crown Prince, the Crown Princess, and the two young masters of the Qin estate have come to our Kaidai veranda, so I naturally have to be the host. This table is on me. Mu Rochuan sat down with a smile and said to the steward of Kaidai Pavilion behind her, bring the best wine and serve all the vegetables. Yes. The steward hastily bowed with a smile and retreated out of the door with his men. He was naturally a shrewd person and knew that the people in this private room were all wealthy and respectable people. So he quickly dispatched two people to guard the door to prevent anyone from offending the honored guests again. Mu Rochuan looked at the Crown Prince with a smile. Rochuan will toast to the Crown Prince first as a sign of respect. Your Highness the Crown Prince's distinguished status has condescended to our Kaidai Pavilion. Your presence brings light to our humble dwelling. 10 o'clock. Tomorrow, 6 o'clock. Slow neck, slow waist. Chapter 26:11. Prince Immerse sized her up with an extremely indifferent expression. Seeing her dignified expression and natural and unrestrained appearance, she indeed didn't lose the dignity of a noble family's young lady. So he raised his hand and toasted her. He could be considered to have fulfilled the main family's great hospitality. Arbor turned to look at this eldest miss and said coldly, you ran inside just to give us a toast? State your objective as soon as possible. She never liked to beat around the bush, so Mu Rochuan definitely wouldn't visit her without a reason. Mu Rochuan wasn't angry and merely glanced at Arbor indifferently. Rochuan already knows about the Crown Princess's request to the Mu family. You want my mother to bring me and all the womenfolk of the Mu family to Yeshin Gate to welcome you. Could it be that you want grandmother to also kneel and welcome you? Mo Yin's eyes turned several degrees colder. Eldest Miss Mu's meaning is that we can't kneel to the Crown Princess? Mu Rochuan bit her lip, knowing that she had said the wrong thing. Even if she wanted her grandmother to welcome her, even if she had to kneel and welcome her, there was nothing inappropriate in terms of national law. In their great divine province, strength reigned supreme, and there weren't too many restraints on etiquette. So what if she was her grandmother? In the face of national etiquette, family etiquette still had to yield. Since you said so, then I've changed my mind. Mu Rochuan sighed in relief, a faint smile on her lips. In that case, I want family head Mu to bring the entire estate to Yeshin Gate to welcome my mother and me. All the juniors in the estate must kneel 3 times and kowtow 9 times to welcome my mother. Are you satisfied with this arrangement? Mu Rochuan almost couldn't catch her breath, and her face turned ashen from anger. Her hands clenched tightly under her sleeves, and she suppressed her belly full of anger as she said coldly, Crown Princess, it's best if you don't reach for a yard after taking an inch. This Crown Princess really likes to reach for a yard after taking an inch. The little stoic directly slapped her chopsticks on the table, not giving Mu Rochuan any face. Pass on my words to family head Mu. She squinted her eyes and said expressionlessly, I really hope that the Mu family can have pride and be fearless of death. If you want to die, I'll just watch. Isn't the Crown Princess going too far? Mu Rochuan angrily said, even if the Mu family has wronged you and your mother all these years, how many innocent people are there in a Mu family? How can you bear to bury their lives in your own willful and reckless actions? Innocent? Ha ha ha. Arbor laughed coldly. However, there was no trace of a smile on her face. This, on the contrary, made people feel extremely stifled. Are there any innocent people in the Mu family? Why did her mother give up her position as the family head's wife and leave her hometown to go to the lower star field? Concubine sure manipulated the dark hands behind the scenes and ruined her life. How many members of the Mu family were involved in this and persecuted her? This innocent and pitiful girl. It was just that she had become stronger in this life, which made them look weak, so they kept saying that they were innocent. The 5th young master felt his eyelids twitch. It turned out that the stoic face he saw in Langfang had a pretty good attitude despite being cold and conniving. You can save them. Arbor's eyes were full of mockery. You, unreconciled, Arbor coldly said, this is only the beginning. I said before that your Mu family will suffer once I return. Even if you're a dragon, you'll have to coil up for me. Even if you're a tiger, you'll have to lie down for me. Unreconciled? Arbor's fingers clenched, and the teacup in her hand turned into powder. Endure it. Chapter 26:12. The private room was dead silent for a moment, and everyone kept quiet out of fear. The 5th young master, who was used to rebuking the little stoic, didn't even freaking dare to speak now. He only felt that the atmosphere inside the private room was heavy, and anyone with a discerning eye could tell that the stoic girl was doing her utmost to control her fury. Mu Rochuan forcefully suppressed the fury in her eyes, and there was an indescribable gloom coiling around her heart that was difficult to emit. The little stoic didn't say anything after that, but her eyes truly expressed one meaning. Eldest Miss Mu, for the sake of your thousands of clansmen, shouldn't you stand up and fulfill your duty as the eldest miss of an aristocratic family? Mu Rochuan took another breath. Just as she was about to speak, she heard a knock on the door. The page boy had long been stifled by the atmosphere inside the private room, and he hastily stepped forward to open the door. The manager's smile bloomed like a flower as he led in a man and a woman wrapped in cyan cloaks. He laughed heartily and said, Congratulations, eldest Mississippi, congratulations. Eldest Mississippi, the Royal Academy sent someone to deliver an invitation. At this time, several waves of cheers had already come from downstairs. As the Royal Academy's important place to deliver invitations, every year, Kaidai Veranda would always gather many people to watch on a specific day like this. It seemed that several people downstairs had also received an invitation from the Academy. After the cyan cloak man walked through the door, he directly raised his hand. Everyone saw a mechanical wooden bird flapping, its wings fluttering as it flew in from outside, with a crimson invitation sealed with a circular seal in its mouth. The mechanical bird flapped its wings and landed on the table. It spat the invitation on the table, and its mouth opened and closed, emitting a middle-aged man's voice with clear handwriting. Congratulations, student Mu Rochuan. I am Director Chi Duo. I welcome you to participate in the Royal Academy's entrance exam this spring. Please bring this invitation with you to Wind Thunder City on March 15th of this year. At that time, someone will guide you on how to participate in the exam. A joyful expression instantly flashed across Mu Rochuan's face, and she reached out to pick up the invitation. She stood up and bowed respectfully to the two people who delivered the invitation. Many thanks to the two of you. Arbor's mouth twitched as he thought to himself, what kind of invitation is this talisman technique? It's obvious that the royal school isn't that great. The two men and women who had delivered the invitation letters were the teachers of the ordinary class of the royal school. Towards these students who had the potential to enter the royal school, they were naturally very courteous, especially since these two instructors had obviously already inquired about the identities of Mo Lien, eldest Qin, and the others present here. Their expressions became even more respectful. The male instructor in a green windbreaker smiled and said politely to everyone, Divine Prefecture's Crown Prince, Qin Estate's eldest young master, fifth young master, and Mu Clan's eldest young miss. Then on March 15th, we will meet in Wind Thunder City. I won't bother you. Goodbye. Xiao Mu was a bit bewildered as she watched the departing figures of the two instructors. She then gloomily looked at Mo Lien. You also want to go? Mo Lien was also stunned. Only then did she remember something. She said, Imperial Father mentioned this to me in the study. All the heirs of the Imperial family have to go to the Academy for a while. In other words, the royal families of the three prefectures would send their princes to the Academy to gain experience. Arbor propped up his little chin, and his little face was a little puffed up with anger. Lord Jojo was being looked down upon. They all had an invitation letter, but only Lord Jojo didn't. Seeing that the little fellow was angry, Mo Lien hurriedly coaxed, Jojo, there's nothing fun in that academy. Chapter 26:13. Eldest young Master Qin couldn't help but laugh. That's right, the academy has everything from the three prefectures. There are even some barbarians who drink raw meat and drink blood and are uneducated. All they did was compete with each other all day long. There really wasn't much meaning to it. Jojo, it's fine if you don't go. Oomph. Sir Jojo's little face was indignant. Whether or not she wanted to go was one thing, but whether or not she could go was another. She actually didn't even have the qualifications to go to the Royal Academy. Everyone had an invitation letter, but she didn't. Jojo was so angry. Mu Rochuan smiled faintly and said, those who can participate in the Royal Academy's entrance exam basically have their own specialties. For example, fifth young master. Although he doesn't have any cultivation, he's also on the list of the Academy's invitees because of his excellent Guqin skills. Mu Rochuan explained faintly. The Royal Academy includes cultivation, weapon refinement, pill refinement, talismans, array mechanisms, dance, music, books, painting, and so on. They all have specialized subjects and only take in the top talents of the three prefectures. In other words, Sir Jojo wasn't considered a top talent? Mo Lien rubbed the little fellow's head and said with a grin, Jojo is the best. Eldest young Master Qin nodded repeatedly and said, that makes sense. Jojo is the most talented girl I've ever seen. It's the Royal Academy's loss that they didn't send you an invitation letter. Sir Jojo nodded inwardly in deep agreement. That's right. It was the Royal Academy's loss that they didn't send her an invitation letter. Mu Rochuan was so angry that she wanted to laugh. This little girl's bad temper was caused by people's flattery, right? Mu Rochuan said very faintly, "The Royal Academy has first-hand information on all the talents in the world. Even if you're in the most remote corner of the 3 prefectures and have been unknown for many years, you'll still be discovered by the Royal Academy. You don't have an invitation letter, which means that you're not recognized by the Academy." Of course, Mu Rochuan suppressed the mockery in her eyes and glanced at Arbor. How could a little third-level spiritual master with no outstanding cultivation and no other abilities enter the Royal Academy's eyes? She had clearly chosen to forget about the blue storage talisman in Arbor's hand. In fact, the blue storage talisman drawn by Arbor had already reached a new level. Not only could it store inanimate objects, but it could also store living things. Moreover, this was a height that the members of a talisman aristocratic family would never be able to attain in their lifetimes. It's merely an invitation. Xiaomu pursed her small mouth and harumphed. It's merely a qualification for the entrance test. It's not like he's definitely going in. But you don't even have an invitation letter. You don't even have the qualifications to take the test. Mu Rochuan originally wanted to refute indignantly, but when she saw the Crown Prince's lukewarm gaze sweep over her, she immediately became speechless. The warning in the Crown Prince's eyes was too obvious. Mu Rochuan retracted her fist. She felt a faint anger in her heart, but she couldn't explain why. Her mother had clearly told her to get along well with the little girl, but for some reason, when she saw this expressionless face, she felt a faint trace of anger. She felt that under that calm, stoic face, there was an insufferably arrogant arrogance. Mu Rochuan took a deep breath and stood up. "Crown Prince, 2 zither gentlemen, then Rochuan will also take her leave." Her heart was now completely focused on the Royal Academy's invitation letter. She planned to go back and draw a few more talismans to prepare. Chapter 2614. Arbor didn't even bat an eyelid and only said aloofly, "Don't forget to pass a message to family head Mu." Mu Rochuan's elated heart chilled again in a split second, and she stormed out in a huff. The little stoic was truly too hateful. She didn't even know how to describe this malicious little girl. She was indulging in the wildest fantasies. She actually wanted her father to lead a group of Mu family disciples to welcome her and her mother. Then what would she do to her mother? What would she do to the entire Mu clan's reputation? Putting aside the fact that Mu Rochuan rushed to the Mu residence in a fit of rage. Sir Jojo was eating this whatever reared vegetable series, but he felt somewhat listless. "Jojo, don't worry. With your talent, if you really show your face in front of the Royal Academy, the instructors of the various academies' special grade classes will definitely cry and yell as they fight to take you in as a student." Fifth young master silently twitched his mouth. What was going on? Why did his elder brother's style suddenly change? Although the Qin estate's eldest young master isn't much of a person, his words are especially true. "That's right, Jojo. That's how it is," Emolian said with a nod. "Eldest young master. What do you mean he's not much of a person? He's also very nice, all right." Sir Jojo harumphed and poked at the fried chicken in his bowl with his chopsticks. "Big liar." Emolian irritably glared at the Qin estate's eldest young master. "I'm calling you a liar." The Qin estate's eldest young master was instantly speechless. He swept a glance at Emolian and said, "Every word I said came from the bottom of my heart, so it's absolutely true." Jojo's heart dropped. The main thing was that everyone had an invitation letter, but she didn't. "Jojo, let me tell you, that Royal Academy isn't fun at all." Eldest young Master Qin slapped the table and shouted, "Did you know that old Fifth tore up the invitation letter he received? He still doesn't want to go." Fifth young master was stupefied. When had he ever said that he didn't want to go? "Big brother, don't you feel guilty saying this? Go. Emolian understood the little girl's feelings the best. She quickly took her little hand and comforted her. "Jojo, I'm not going either. None of us are going. There's no point in going to that lousy school. Whoever wants to go can go." Mr. Jojo looked at him listlessly. He thought for a moment and said, Your father summoned you to the study and specifically mentioned this matter. That means you must go. I'm already 20 years old. Why should I go to college? I'm not going. Fifth young Master Qin added, in our divine province, 20 years old is merely an infant. The top students in the royal school are all under 100 years old. Mo Lien and eldest young Sir Qin were both speechless. Does this person not know how to speak without stabbing a knife? The little fellow watched from the side with a pitiful expression. His entire body was shriveled up. It's fine. Isn't it just an invitation? I'll get one for you, eldest young Master Qin said. Mo Lien cast an unhappy glance at him. Wasn't this eldest Qin getting a little carried away? He even referred to himself as Big Brother. Be good. Hubby will get an invitation letter for you. Mr. Jojo propped up his little chin and turned to look outside the window. At this very moment, at the famous gathering place of the three prefectures, Wind Thunder City, which was independent of the three prefectures, several mountain peaks, enshrouded in a faint mist, floated in the sky. It was the residence of Wind Thunder City's Royal Academy's principal, Yun Piaomiao. Near the evening of this day, the Royal Academy's principal welcomed an uninvited guest that he hadn't seen in a long time. When the visitor removed the large bamboo hat that was covered by a thin veil and revealed a face, Yun Piaomiao couldn't help but be stunned. Chapter 26:15. Big Brother. Yun Piaomiao's eyes were filled with excitement as he looked at his brother, who had been missing for so many years without returning. It really is your big brother. Why did you suddenly come back? Aren't you happy? The person who came was wearing plain clothes. His expression was cold, but there was a faint smile in his eyes. How can I not be happy? Yun Piaomiao cried out happily. His brother had returned. How could he not be happy? No matter what other people thought, he was very happy. Don't tell the Yun family about my return. The person reached out and patted his shoulder. The two brothers had similar eyebrows, but compared to Yun Piaomiao's leisurely and indifferent expression, this older brother seemed to be more cold. Yun Piaomiao's eyes dimmed. Big brother, it must be hard for you to wander alone without a family to support you. That person smiled and shook his head. It's good this way. I won't force myself to live a life I don't want to live. Sigh. Yun Piaomiao sighed. Thinking of his brother's personality, he was speechless. Although his brother was cold, when he decided on something, even if you used 800 cows to pull him, you wouldn't be able to change his mind. All right, let's talk about other matters later. The person smiled and looked at him. He reached out his hand and said, Principal of the Imperial School, I'm here to ask you for 8 invitation letters. Yun Piaomiao was startled. Then he laughed. What kind of little fellows actually need you to come personally and ask me for them? Very interesting. That person seemed to have thought of something interesting and chuckled. I can guarantee that your Imperial School will be very lively in the future. I'm looking forward to it, big brother. Yun Piaomiao took out 8 invitation letters and handed them to the other party. He couldn't help but laugh out loud. On the other side, Mo Lien, who had eaten a tasteless meal, came out of Kai-Dai Pavilion with the listless little fellow in her arms. With a few words, she sent the 2 troublesome fellows from the Qin estate away. Now that she was carrying the little fellow into the carriage, she couldn't help but say softly, Don't worry, it's just a copy of an invitation letter. I'll leave this matter to my husband. Copy. The corner of Arbor's mouth twitched. Wasn't that just making a copy of an invitation letter? How could she, Mr. Jojo, use counterfeit goods? No. Mr. Jojo snuggled his head into his arms unhappily, with an unhappy expression on his face. Who would want to fake? Humph. If she didn't have an invitation letter, then so be it. When Mo Lien went to the academy, she would stay in the Eastern Palace to concoct pills, draw talismans, and cultivate diligently. After a while, he would surpass eldest Qin in terms of cultivation, surpassing Duanyu, surpassing Mo Lien. He surpassed everyone else, crushed them, chased them, beat them up like dogs, and make them all raise the white flag and surrender. Just the thought of it was interesting. What are you thinking about, baby? Mo Lien lowered her head and saw the little guy's daydreaming expression. Needless to say, his expression was somewhat hilarious and wretched. Could it be that he was thinking of beating someone up in his heart? I have to say, Prince Imo, you really hit the nail on the head. Not only does the little guy want to beat people up, he also wants to beat all of you up. Little Jojo turned his head and tilted his head to the side. He closed his eyes and said, "Time to sleep." Imo Lien couldn't help but laugh. This little fellow had suffered a blow today, so it was better for him not to provoke her. He didn't want to trigger her fuse and cause the little fellow to explode. That would be his bad luck. "Lien, how long will you be gone?" Chapter 26:16. The little one's voice was so soft and muffled that it touched Imo Lien's heart. "Jojo, you can't bear for me to go." Imo Lien's mood improved at once. Look, his darling was becoming more and more inseparable from him. How wonderful. He thought she was unhappy because she didn't receive an invitation, but it turned out that a large part of the reason was because she couldn't go with him. True, if he went to that Wind Thunder City alone, he would be separated from his wife. That wouldn't be good. Therefore, it was urgent to make a copy of the invitation letter. Imo Lien lowered his head and kissed her fluffy hair. "Jojo, don't worry. I won't go if you don't go. We are husband and wife and will advance and retreat together." After not receiving a response for a while, Imo Lien took a closer look and couldn't help but be amused and annoyed. This little fellow actually fell asleep in his arms with her eyes closed. After returning to the Eastern Palace, he carried the little fellow back to her room and wiped her hands and feet before carrying her to bed. That night, Jojo kept having sweet dreams of being the victor. When she opened her eyes the next morning, she was still bewildered and baffled. What was going on? Yesterday, she kept seeing herself chasing after Imo Lien and Duan Yu to beat up. She beat them up until they fell to the ground and repeatedly begged for mercy, calling them, "Your Majesty the Queen." Arbor's face darkened. Was there actually such a vile and violent gene in her bloodline? "Impossible, sir." Jojo blinked and continued to sit on the bed in a daze. When Kaishio entered, she saw her little master sitting there in a daze with a comical expression. Kaishio couldn't help but smile. "Crown Princess, you're awake?" Arbor stomped off the bed and asked after washing up. I fell asleep yesterday. Call Eunuch Chun over for me," to question him. Not long after, Eunuch Chun led a young eunuch into the room. "Greetings to the Crown Princess." Get up, get up." Arbor waved his hand and ran forward to ask, "Eunuch Chun, how was the debt collection yesterday?" "Very smoothly. In accordance with the Crown Princess's instructions, this servant asked Lord Huifeng to send someone to the Mu family. The Mu family has already prepared the supplies outside the door. We just need to check and load them into the car. Now that the goods are at the entrance of the warehouse, the Crown Princess needs to check them." Arbor shook his head. "Help me call Huifeng over." Eunuch Chen nodded and left. Soon, Huifeng walked in and bowed to Arbor with a grin. "Crown Princess, what orders do you have for this humble one?" Arbor looked at him and said, "Huifeng, I'll leave the goods we took from the Mu family to you. You could distribute them to your brothers." Huifeng was startled for a moment before he excitedly said, Yes, Crown Princess. Huifeng will do it immediately." Arbor stretched out his hand to yawn. After watching Huifeng leave in a hurry, he said to Kai Xiao, "If anyone from the Mu family visits in the next 2 days, refuse to see them." "Yes, Mu family, Gilda Garden." Mu Jingfeng stared at Mu Qingya, who was sitting next to him, with a tense expression. He sighed deeply and said, "You don't have to do this." Mu Qingya shook her head and resolutely said, "Family head, as a member of the Mu family, this is what I must do. This concubine will remember husband's consideration for my dignity." Mu Qingya smiled faintly. "But for the sake of the Mu family, what does this bit of dignity count for?" Chapter 26:17. Mu Jingfeng reached out to hold her hand. "Qingya, it's really unfair for you to do this." "It's not unfair, old master." Mu Qingya smiled faintly. "For old master, for the entire Mu family, and for the prosperity of everything, Qingya won't feel wronged at all. After sister returns, it's also possible for Qingya to step down from the position of matriarch of the household. Don't spout nonsense." Displeasure flashed across Mu Jingfeng's eyes. What's so good about her being the head of the household? It's not like she hasn't been the matriarch before. Have you seen her manage things? Besides, she's been missing for so many years and doesn't understand the situation in China at all. Even if she returns, who knows how long it'll take for her to adapt to life here. This matriarch position is yours, and no one can snatch it away from you. Just take it with a peace of mind. I'll support you in everything. Mu Qingyao looked at him worriedly. Old master, you mustn't bear a grudge against sister and Jojo for Qingyao's sake. If you do, I'll have sinned greatly. Besides, Jojo is still young. After being outside for so many years, she must have suffered a lot. It's reasonable for her to have resentment in her heart. As long as we tolerate her, then I'm the one who wants her to suffer. It's her own mother who caused it. Mu Jingfeng waved his hand and interrupted Mu Qingyao's words. Don't speak up for her. I know what kind of character she and her daughter have. Mu Qingyao choked. She wanted to persuade family head Mu again when she heard a report from outside. Family head, Madam, eldest miss is here. Mu Rochuan stormed in angrily. Without a second word, she repeated what Arbor said in the afternoon. Instantly, the anger that Mu Jingfeng had just suppressed flared up again. He smashed the short table beside him with a slap and said angrily, "This unfilial daughter." Mu Qingyao gently advised, "Rochuan, don't take things too seriously. She wasn't like this yesterday. Did you do something to piss her off?" Mu Rochuan was furious. What can I make her angry about? If I dare to say anything bad to her, her man will slap me to death. Mother, you didn't see the situation in Kai-Dai Pavilion. His Highness the Crown Prince didn't allow me to say a single word. I can only sit there and listen. There's also that eldest young master of the Qin estate. He also stood by her side and spoke in agreement. You didn't see it. I, your daughter, am not allowed to say anything in front of my younger sister. I feel that younger sister's bad habit of daring to argue with the heavens and the earth is caused by brother-in-law's indulgence. You didn't see how much brother-in-law spoils her. Mu Roxian poured out all her bitterness, and only then did she feel a little better. Ever since she met Arbor and Langfang, she had been in a bad mood. She couldn't find a reason why she didn't like this girl. It was probably because of the little fellow's poor attitude. During this period of time, he had been feeling aggrieved in his heart, and a fire was burning fiercely. He must have had 8 lifetimes of bad luck to meet such a weirdo. After hearing his daughter's complaint, Mu Jingfeng was fuming. She really knows how to push her luck. She really thinks that the Mu family is easy to step on. Mu Qingyao worriedly said, "Husband, let's talk things over properly. What kind of enmity could there be between father and daughter? What else is there to talk about? This unfilial daughter is infuriating. Mu Liang is here. Go gather the elders. The Mu family's core members will have a meeting in half an hour." Chapter 26:18. Jingxing, Jingyuan, take the Mu family's elite disciples and make preparations. Immediately withdraw from the imperial capital in secret, Mu Jingfeng ordered coldly. Mu Jingxing and Mu Jingyuan exchanged glances. Old Fifth Mu Jingyang said indignantly, "Are we really going to withdraw? Our forces in the imperial capital can't be completely withdrawn in a few days. What else can we do? Are we really going to sit and wait for the emperor to execute our entire Mu family?" Mu Jingfeng said coldly. Old Fifth Mu Jingyang's mouth was full of bitterness. "Don't tell me it's true? Old Fifth, you aren't still that naive, right?" Mu Jingxing glanced at him angrily. The emperor personally wrote an imperial edict. How can it be fake? Today is the 4th day. Elder Qing sighed. Tomorrow is the last day. Xingxin, take your mother and sister, as well as your cousins and the elder's heirs, and leave using the transportation talisman matrix first. The elder's expressions visibly relaxed after Mu Jingfeng gave his order. They naturally had their own selfish motives. Compared to the entire Mu family, their heirs were naturally more important. Since they had reached this point, there was no room for negotiation, so they might as well give up on the Mu family's forces in the imperial capital and withdraw quickly. In any case, with their talisman patrician family's overall strength, they could settle down anywhere. At most, they would no longer mingle in the Great Divine Province and head at Song Province or Ming Province. Who would dare to not greet them with a respectful smile? However, their forces that had taken root in the Divine Province for thousands of years had to withdraw completely because of that girl's words. Just thinking about it made them extremely indignant. That daughter of the patriarch was really a jinx. She stirred up a storm as soon as she returned, causing the entire Mu family to be unable to find peace. It was truly better for her to continue disappearing or simply take root on Seacone Planet and never return. The elders' faces darkened as they angrily cursed the little stoic in their hearts. At this time, Mu Liang suddenly pushed open the door and walked in with a grave expression. Family head, the purple forest guards dispatched by the emperor have surrounded our entire Mu family. Mu Jingfeng closed his eyes. The fury in his heart had already reached its peak. The teleportation glyph array can only teleport 10 people at a time, and it can only be used 6 times in a row. The teleportation distance won't exceed 20 kilometers. Mu Jingyuan said coldly, "Currently, we only have 5 sets of teleportation array glyphs. How many people do you think we can save?" Mu Jingxing said angrily, "Third brother, look at the situation now. Why are you still angry with the patriarch? Now that the 7 of us brothers are of the same breath and branch, the whole family should be tied together like a rope." Mu Jingyuan sneered. Master refused to lower his head for that meager face of his. "I see that all of you are scheming for your own benefit. I don't believe that the elders present here wouldn't want to send their children out first." The elders glanced at Mu Jingyuan embarrassedly and were about to refute. Bang! The door was forcefully pushed open by someone. 3 or 4 of the clan's elite disciples had solemn expressions on their faces. They clustered around an old man with erect, silver hair and a dignified face. "Jingfeng, make the arrangements. This old man will personally lead all of you to welcome my granddaughter home." Mu Jingfeng was startled. He hastily stood up and bowed to the old man in unison with his younger brothers and elders. "Old family head." Mu Tsangwei raised his hand. "Let's do it this way. She said 6 chapters yesterday, but in the end, she still gave you 8 chapters. Chapter 26:19. It was close to noon. Both sides of the main road of Changle Avenue were packed with people. The restaurants and tea houses were already filled with spectators, and everyone was relishing in discussing a major event. A major event that everyone in the imperial capital knew about. Chirp, 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 the voices of the crowd mingled together, forming a chaotic symphony. "They're coming, they're coming. Ah, where's the procession? Hey, don't push, why are you pushing? You can't squeeze to the front no matter how hard you push." Fong Su led a group of forest guards and directed the imperial guards to the place where the people were gathered. They blocked the 2 sides of the road and shouted, "Don't push and shove. Maintain order. I see them coming." It was unknown who shouted this, but it was as if a pot of boiling water had exploded. Everyone stretched their necks and looked towards the main road with all their might. Whoa! A large group of people was really heading toward the imperial palace in a grandiose manner. Leading them was the hale and hearty old patriarch of the Mu clan, Mu Tsang. Patriarch Mu and Madame Mu followed closely behind the old patriarch. Following them were the 6 core sons of the Mu clan and a group of elders. Thousands of Mu clan disciples followed closely behind in a grandiose manner. Following the ceremonial official's command, they all knelt down in unison, regardless of whether they felt comfortable or not. Since it was the old patriarch's command, they all respectfully kowtowed 3 times in the direction of the imperial palace. The crowd of onlookers watched as the group of Mu family juniors walked a few steps before kneeling down and respectfully kowtowing 3 times. Their eyes couldn't help but widen in shock. Whoa, this was really a grand ceremony of 3 kowtows and 9 kowtows. They were going all the way to the imperial palace to receive the crown princess. This lineup truly caused an uproar in the entire city. On the 2nd floor of Kaidai Pavilion, young masters and young misses from various sects and patrician families were seated in several private rooms. Second Qin was inside one of these private rooms, and his gaze was apathetic as he scanned the area below. Eldest young Sir Chin personally poured himself a cup of tea. After taking a sip, he clicked his tongue in praise. Sigh. I knew that my Jojo wouldn't go back so quietly. Look, only my Jo can make such a big fuss. Omega Kitoku remained silent. After a long while, he asked, You've seen her? Yes. Eldest young Sir Chin blinked and looked at him excitedly. I saw her beat up that second Miss Moo's nose in public. What do you think will happen when little Jojo comes home? Nothing much, Omega Kitoku said calmly. Tisk. Eldest young Sir Chin glanced at him and muttered, boring. He then muttered to himself excitedly. I feel that the Mu clan's unlucky days have only officially begun now. Eldest young Sir Omega Kitoku was silent for a long while before saying, I think it'll be better if you put away that gloating face of yours. In the adjacent room, several young misses from noble families were sitting together by the window and watching the commotion below with mocking gazes. The Mu clan is truly regressing as they age. Chen Baojia couldn't help but remark coldly, Look at how they're being toyed around by a little girl. I really feel sorry for them. Isn't that so? Ji family's young miss, Ji Xiang, couldn't resist laughing out loud. They're the 6 great patrician families with such little guts. What a joke. Chapter 2620. Zhongli Jue tilted her head and looked out the window, just in time to see old patriarch Mu Tsang leading a group of Mu family members away. She curled her lips and sneered, Don't talk nonsense if you don't know. This is an order personally given by the great emperor to force the Mu family to submit. Although the Mu family has 1,000 years of heritage, can an arm bend a thigh? They naturally don't dare to disobey the great emperor's order. Chen Baojia angrily grasped the handkerchief at her fingertips and forcefully suppressed her anger. However, a flower-like smile appeared on her face. Perhaps the great emperor has acknowledged her. Acknowledged? Is that possible? Zhongli Jue's face slightly darkened, and the cold light in her eyes disappeared. This woman caused a huge uproar as soon as she returned to the imperial capital. She really made people dislike her to the extreme. Zhongli Jue's face couldn't help but darken when she thought about how she was kicked out of the Crown Prince's residence after only a few days. His Highness the Crown Prince was only bewitched by that dem on his face. He would get tired of her one day. Kneel. Following the ceremonial officer's command, the thousands of Mu family disciples knelt down again and kowtowed 3 times in unison. Then, they stood up and walked forward. Xiao Yingchun was mixed in the crowd, wrapped in a tattered bedsheet. She looked at the Mu family's procession, and her eyes almost shot out a poisonous light. Based on what? Why was it that when she returned to the Mu family, she was like a cat or a dog, casually picked up by them from the back door and thrown into a small courtyard in a corner, and that was it? Based on what when that slut returned to the Mu family, she could cause such a huge commotion, and no one dared to question her? Xiao Yingchun was so angry that she couldn't help but tremble. Standing beside her, Madame Li, who had a hunched back and a face full of wrinkles, was also so angry that she wanted to rush up and beat her. Yingchun, the Mu family is simply too much. Ever since the mother and daughter were kicked out of the Mu family, they lived a bitter life fighting for food with dogs. The 2 of them were ordinary people and didn't have any ability to survive. Without Xiao Tsung, this man, in front of them, the 2 of them lived a very miserable life. In fact, the 2 of them had stayed at the inn for 2 or 3 days at the beginning. They had pawned all the jewelry on their heads and lived a good life for 2 days. However, the prices in the great divine land were exorbitant. The jewelry they pawned was only enough to last them for 2 days. On the 3rd night, they were beaten up and chased out of the inn because they couldn't afford it. After that, the mother and daughter were like a group of beggars, living in the poorest dilapidated temple in the north of Huanlang. They ate rotten steamed buns and drank cold water that stuck in their teeth. In the middle of winter, they were so cold that their hands were full of sores. In order to survive, the 2 of them discussed for a while and decided to pawn off the only 2 sets of clothes that were made of good material. They only wore a white undergarment underneath and snatched a sheet from a beggar to wrap it around their bodies to protect them from the cold. Then it was now. They heard that the Mu family was welcoming the little crown princess home, so they followed a group of passers-by who did not know the situation and came to watch the fun. It would have been better if they didn't look, but once they did, they were so angry that one Buddha ascended to the heavens and two Buddhas left their bodies. The people from a Mu family are a bunch of snobs, Madame Lee shrieked. Back then, it was clearly them who fought to bring us here. Now, they don't care about our lives and even kicked us out of the house. Compared to the treatment they received in Arbor, the mother and daughter wished for nothing more than to hug each other and cry their hearts out, saying that the heavens were unfair and that people's hearts were unpredictable. Chapter 26-21. She even fought to bring the mother and daughter here. Madame Lee didn't even know how to blush when she said this. How could they not understand the purpose of Shur Huaxin bringing them to the divine land? However, it was funny that both mother and daughter were self-righteous people. They were weirdos who thought and considered everything from their own vantage point. Therefore, no matter what happened, both mother and daughter would never look to themselves for the reason. In any case, everything was someone else's fault. Mom, what should we do now? Xiao Yingchun resentfully glared at the Mu family's departing figures and said angrily, "That bitch stole everything from me. I won't let her off. I definitely won't let her off." Madame Lee also nodded and said angrily, "All right, let's think of a way to make her forget about being the Mu family's young miss. We must disrupt her so that she can't even become the crown princess." "That bitch wants to steal everything from me," Xiao Yingchun said resentfully. "She should also have a taste of what it's like to have nothing." The mother and daughter swore to the heavens for a long time. Seeing that the Mu family's entourage had already passed, they sneakily retreated from the crowd. They originally wanted to head in the direction of the imperial palace, but a large palm suddenly reached out from behind and covered Xiao Yingchun's mouth and nose, dragging her into a slender alley at the side. Xiao Yingchun's eyes widened in horror, and she moaned a few times as her body was uncontrollably dragged into the alley. Her mother, Madame Lee, was still cursing when she suddenly turned around upon hearing the noise. She shrieked in fright and chased into the alley while wailing, "Yingchun, Yingchun." At this moment, the crowd outside was noisily discussing the Mu family's matters, so no one paid attention to the mother and daughter. Even after Xiao Yingchun was dragged into the dark alley and Madame Lee chased after her, no one noticed that two insignificant beggars were missing from the crowd. MMPH, MMPH! Xiao Yingchun struggled with all her might, expending all the strength she had since she was in her mother's womb. Madame Lee chased over and grabbed a burly man's arm, repeatedly scratching the back of his arm. "Ah, let go of my daughter, let go of her. Damn old hag, scram." The burly man slapped Madame Lee to the ground and stepped on her foot. "Ah." Madame Lee suddenly felt pain all over her body. One of her leg bones seemed to have been broken by the strong man's foot. "What are you doing? What are you doing?" Xiao Yingchun screamed and pushed the man's arm with all her might. Unexpectedly, the man forcefully pinched her chin, and the dirty sheets wrapped around her body also hung on the ground. Xiao Yingchun's entire body trembled as she stared in horror at the one-eyed man in front of her. No, don't come over. No, don't." Xiao Yingchun's body trembled as she repeatedly shook her head. Her eyes were filled with terror and panic, and she was practically unable to speak. The one-eyed man raised his hand to touch her face, and then muttered in disdain, "Shoddy work. I don't know if it can be sold for a good price. Let's go." "Oh, what are you doing?" "Ah." Xiao Yingchun's feet hit the ground as she was dragged into the alley. Madame Lee hurriedly pulled out a wooden stick from the side and chased after her while dragging her crippled leg. She shrieked, "Let go of me, Yingchun. Who are you? What are you doing?" "Old hag, do I need to explain who I am to you?" Seeing Madame Lee chase after him, the one-eyed man kicked her back. Chapter 26-22. Immediately after, he chased after the old woman and forcefully kicked her a few more times. The kicks caused Madame Lee to cry out in pain. Soon, She was gasping for air and lying on the ice-cold ground in the alley, on the verge of death. You and your daughter are out of luck. That burly man grinned mischievously. I haven't eaten a full meal for several days. Once I sell your daughter, I'll have money. Ah, what are you doing? You scoundrel, let go of me, let go of me. Hey, who wants to scoundrel you? That burly man's slap came down, but after some thought, he still didn't hit Xiao Yingchuan's face. He directly tore off the cloth on Xiao Yingchuan's shoulder. An old woman's face with black skin and rough hands. If it weren't for the fact that I really don't have any food to eat, why would I catch you? I don't even know if the market will accept you. As the burly man grumbled, he grabbed Xiao Yingchuan's hair and directly dragged her into the alley. He didn't have the slightest bit of tenderness for the fairer sex. Ah! Xiao Yingchun shrieked in horror. She hugged that man's leg and howled, Let me go, strong man, let me go. Give me 100 spirit coins, and I'll let you go, woman. Xiao Yingchun felt even more resentful and powerless. Right now, let alone 100 spirit coins, she couldn't even find 1 spirit coin on her. You don't have any spirit coins? You don't have any spirit coins, yet you dare to babble nonsense to me. That burly man mercilessly grabbed her hair and pulled her scalp, dragging her inside like he was grabbing a little chick. Xiao Yingchun shrieked, Mother, mother, save me. Why are you lying there? Mother, mother. Ah, let go. Mother, you old bastard, why don't you move? What are you doing? Are you just going to watch as your daughter is being sold? Useless thing. Trash, trash, trash. All of you are trash. Xiao Yingchun went from disappointment to despair, and then to vicious roars that filled the sky. How would she know that her mother, Madame Li, had been kicked to the ground by the burly man? Her limbs were all broken, and she was lying on the cold ground, unable to get up. This small alley that led to the Jade Tripod Market was only bustling with activity at night, and the flowers were red and the willows were green. At this moment, it was broad daylight. Naturally, very few people came over. Therefore, it wasn't until late at night that the night watchman discovered in horror that someone had died in this small alley. By the time they found Madame Li, she was already lying on the ground with her eyes wide open. She had been frozen to death. This was all for later. At this moment, Xiao Yingchun was kicking and punching that burly man with all her might, while cursing her old mother for not being strong enough. She was dragged all the way through the Jade Tripod Market's entrance by someone by the scalp. The rows of red lanterns at the entrance of the Jade Tripod Market were naturally dark. The door was tightly shut. The brawny man walked to a small door at the side and knocked on the door with force. The small door quickly opened, and a hunchbacked old man came out to greet him. He glanced at him and couldn't hide his disgust as he said, Wang Ba, why are you here again? Didn't our Yin Yang already warn you not to come here? Hey, old man Li, don't block my path to wealth. Scram, scram, scram to the side. I naturally came here today to deliver goods for Yin Yang. I'll let go, let go. The hunchbacked old man called Old Man Li swept a mocking glance at Wang Ba. Huh, you brat. Who knows where you caught this unmarried maiden again? Chapter 26-23. A virgin. Sun Yang, a middle-aged woman with a bare chest and arms, was sitting on a cushion covered in deer hair. She wore a large string of sandalwood beads on her hand and had a black mole at the corner of her mouth. When she heard this, she didn't even lift her eyelids and directly smashed the teacup next to her at Wang Ba's head. Huh, do you believe it yourself? Wang Ba, I think you're becoming more and more unfashionable. Do you think my Jade Tripod Market takes in all kinds of goods? Look at this woman. She doesn't have a figure or a face. Most importantly, why did you bring a normal person to my place? Wang Ba smiled apologetically and said, Big sister, do you think you could give me a few dozen spirit coins? Just treat it as my traveling expenses. If you don't like her, you can also make her a servant girl who cooks fires and washes feet. Bah! Yin Yang almost spat on Wang Ba's face. I want such a good-for-nothing to be a servant girl who cooks fires and washes feet. Do you really think this old lady is stupid? Scram, scram, scram. Hurry and drag this good-for-nothing away. My guests here won't take a fancy to this kind of trash. Even if you give her away for free, they won't want her. What they wanted was a cultivation furnace. Of course, fair skin and beautiful looks were the most important conditions. Who would fancy such a dark and swarthy girl who looked like a country bumpkin? Ah, big sister, please be kind and give me some traveling expenses. Wang Ba shamelessly kicked Xiao Yingchun and scolded. Hurry and scram over there and serve big sister well. Scram, scram, scram. Yang was annoyed by Wang Ba and turned around to shout at the old man with the mop. Old Li, what are you doing? Next time, you're not allowed to let this scoundrel in again. Yes, yes, yes. Old Li was also muttering in his heart after being scolded and glared angrily at Wang Ba. All right. Just treat it as this old lady being unlucky and sending you off with a good deed every day. Give him 10 spirit coins. Big sistery, can I call you mother? How can 10 spirit coins be enough? 20 spirit coins, and I'll leave immediately. Wang Ba looked at Yang shamelessly and laughed. Yang looked at him and felt annoyed. She quickly asked someone to take out 20 spirit coins and send him away. From beginning to end, Xiao Yingchun had been curled up in a corner, not daring to move at all. Seeing that the burly man was about to turn around and leave her here, she hurriedly followed after him. Wang Ba turned around and kicked her, saying angrily, "Useless thing, don't follow me. Do you think I have to waste food to feed you?" After saying that, he tossed Xiao Yingchun aside and left without looking back. Xiao Yingchun was so angry that her entire body was trembling. Her entire body was paralyzed on the ground as she turned her head to look at Yang in horror. However, Yang curled her lips in disdain and said, "TSK, this kind of trash. If she were to be sold as a side dish for the customers, I'm afraid the customers wouldn't even like her. Raising her is also a waste of food. Drag her out and bury her as fertilizer." Xiao Yingchun was completely stupefied. She lay limply on the ground. When she saw the 2 shop assistants from Jade Tripod Market seriously coming over to pull her away, she knew they were serious. She hastily shrieked and let out a cry before her death. "No, don't use me as fertilizer. I can use it, I can." Xiao Yingchun didn't know where she got the strength from, but she shoved the 2 shop assistants aside and scrambled over to Yang. She shrieked, Yang, I know there's a good one. I have a good one in my hands." Chapter 26-24. When Xiao Yingchun's arms were grabbed by the 2 shop assistants and she was dragged out again, she roared with all her might. "Wait!" Yang glanced at her coldly and waved her hand. "What good stuff?" "Yes, it's good stuff." Xiao Yingchun stammered. "It's definitely good stuff. 16 years old with extremely good looks. Definitely top-notch. Furthermore, she's already a level 3 spirit master. Think about it. She's only 16 years old. If she's nurtured for a while longer, then she'll definitely be able to become a level 5 or 6 spirit master before she's 20. Yang narrowed her eyes and calculated for a while. She then said indifferently, "She's only a level 3 spirit master at 16 years old. Her aptitude isn't too good. But she's beautiful. Extremely beautiful." Xiao Yingchun dared to say anything for her life. "It's true. If you don't believe me, I'll take you to see the goods one day." Yang glanced at her coldly. "Who is she to you?" "Yes, she's my younger sister, my biological younger sister. I can make the decision." Yang, I'll sell her to you. You, I beg you let me go, okay?" "Ha ha." Yang couldn't help but laugh. "You're really funny. Is this how you sell your biological younger sister?" A trace of viciousness flashed through Xiao Yingchun's eyes, but she still said, Yang is such an important person. How can this be considered harming her? I'm letting her live a good life in the future. Isn't that right? Don't you think so?" Yang glanced at her coldly and nodded. "All right, I'll use you as fertilizer for a few days later. Find a chance to let me see the goods first." Fresh 16-year-old goods were very rare here. Recently, Yuding Market was really short on goods, and she urgently needed to replenish a batch. Since this woman said it so vividly, then she should go take a look. Anyway, She wouldn't lose anything by taking a look. There won't be any trouble, right? Yang was experienced. She naturally knew that some people could be touched, while others couldn't. She didn't want to get herself covered in a stench for the sake of a good. Is there any trouble? Xiao Yingchun concealed the guilt in her eyes and said with an apologetic smile, "Look at me. I'm poor and have no background. What trouble could my biological younger sister possibly have?" Yang smirked sarcastically. "That's true." "Then," she said coldly, "when can I see the goods?" "It'll be done in 2 days. My younger sister is currently heading out of the city to gather medicinal herbs." Xiao and Chun hastily made up a lie. "Don't worry, when she returns in 2 days, you'll be able to see her." "Well, old Li, follow this woman and see what kind of good stuff she is." "Yes." Naturally, no one was aware of Xiao and Chun's actions. Arbor's side had long been prepared. When they heard that the Mu family was about to arrive at Lushing Gate, Arbor changed into a set of plain white robes and hugged his mother's memorial tablet. Accompanied by Mo Lien, he majestically walked towards Lushing Gate under the escort of a group of palace servants. Mu Tsong led the group of Mu family members to Lushing Gate when they saw the little crown princess and her entourage walking over from afar. Lushing Gate had long been cleared out, so they naturally couldn't allow people to crowd around here to watch. As a result, aside from Arbor's entourage, only the soldiers guarding Lushing Gate, as well as the Mu family's entourage, stood there. Following the ceremonial official's command to kneel, the Mu family's juniors gritted their teeth and knelt again. Chapter 26-25. From afar, Mu Tsong and the rest saw a graceful and slender young lady. Her face was cold and exquisite, and her eyes were as deep as ice and snow. Dressed in white, she expressionlessly walked toward them with a memorial tablet in her arms. Everyone's gazes involuntarily froze. Mu Jingfeng, who was standing behind Mu Tsong, was even more stunned. He stood there in a daze as he stared somewhat absent-mindedly at the young lady dressed in white. In a split second, time seemed to have stunned that old time. The mountains and rivers seemed to have blossomed into the most enchanting beauty under the young lady's feet. Mu Jingfeng seemed to be able to see the woman in the bright red dress slowly walking toward him through this icy figure. His internal organs seemed to have been tightly gripped in an instant, and they were all tightly clenched together. She died. Old Master Mu was also completely stunned. His gaze turned sluggishly to Mu Jingrui behind him. Mu Jingrui was also in a daze for quite a while. When his gaze met old Master Mu's, he was completely stupefied. No, he had always thought that his sister-in-law had only gone missing. It should be said that all the information the Mu family had gathered was that Long Chuyun had miraculously disappeared after giving birth. How did Jojo find out that her mother was already dead? Mu Jingrui had investigated for a long time and sorted out a series of clues before setting the tracking direction on Seacombe Planet. Before this, who would have known that the dignified matriarch of the Mu family would run to such a remote and desolate lower star domain like Seacombe Planet? When they first met, Jojo asked him about her birth mother's name. He didn't say it because he felt that he didn't know where to start. What should he say? Say that your mother was originally the madam of our family and that you had a lot of good days ahead of you. Say that the reason you ended up on Seacombe Planet was all your mother's doing. Say that after your mother gave birth to you, she threw you to your adoptive parents and irresponsibly went missing. How could he, as an uncle, say these words? How could he bear to say them? But now Mu Jingrui stared speechlessly at the young lady before him. Her cold expression was as cold as ice and frost, chilling to the bone. There wasn't the slightest bit of tenderness or warmth in her pitch-black eyes. There was only the glint and shadow of a sword, indifferent and emotionless. "Kneel!" The ceremonial official shouted again. All of the Mu family's juniors, gnashing their teeth, lowered their heads and kneeled. He kowtowed again and again. Mu Ruyin and Mu Royun's fingernails unknowingly pierced into their palms. This kind of stifling depression was too stifling. On what basis? Why did they have to kneel in front of this woman and look at her cold eyes as she looked at them from above? On what basis? On what basis did they, the dignified young ladies of the Mu family, have to kneel to this bastard? As for Mu Rochuan, who was following behind Madame Mu, the anger in her heart had already soared to the extreme. A memorial tablet. This arrogant little girl was actually hugging a memorial tablet and walking over. She actually wanted all of the Mu clan's disciples and juniors to kneel and worship this woman who had been dead for God knows how many years, and who might not even have a corpse left. Such a grand occasion. What would happen to her mother? Mu Qingya's reputation. As for Mu Xingqian, he was already in a daze. He felt like a joke. He said that he didn't hate her, but he was very clear that he harbored resentment and hatred towards this biological mother of his. He hated her for leaving without saying goodbye and resented her for abandoning her son. However, when he saw his mother's memorial tablet, it was as if a mountain had suddenly collapsed. Suddenly collapsing like a mountain torrent, it turned out that he had long lost his mother. Chapter 26. Old Master Mu takes a deep breath and is about to speak. Suddenly, a Mu clan disciple rushed out of the crowd and harumphed righteously. Mu clan disciple, Muda, I challenge you. That young man pointed at Arbor, who was hugging the memorial tablet, and coldly said, let me see what qualifications you have to make us Mu clan disciples kneel to you and that slut of a mother. In the blink of an eye, a swift and fierce white figure whizzed in front of that fool like a streak of cold light. Mu Jingxing was alarmed, and he abruptly jumped up and shouted, "Da!" Boom! That young man was slapped by the back of his head, and his entire body was pressed to the ground with his head facing down. He fiercely smashed into the ground with a bang and prostrated himself before kowtowing. The surroundings were dead silent. Everyone stared dumbfoundedly at this scene. The little girl's sudden burst of speed and strength simply shocked everyone. Where are the crown princess's personal guards? A stern rebuke rang out. Huifeng led a group of black-clothed youths to Arbor's side and knelt on one knee as they called out in unison, "Present! Kill him!" Huifeng and the others drew their swords in unison and slashed at the young man on the ground without a word. "No, don't!" Mu Jingxing's pupils contracted, and he hastily shouted to stop them. "You can't kill him. He's your cousin." Mystic energy was attached to the long swords, and there were 7 to 8 strands of power that uniformly rushed at the young man on the ground. "Hold on!" Elder Mu's pupils contracted, and he hastily summoned a fire spirit and tossed it above Muda with a whoosh to help him resist the attacks of Huifeng and the others. In the blink of an eye, Arbor took out his ferrule and slapped it down. It ruthlessly landed on Muda's left arm. Crack! Accompanied by the sound of bones shattering, the pupils of everyone present shrunk. Ruthless, vicious. This was the first impression everyone in the Mu clan had of the young crown princess. Muda rolled on the ground. His eyes flashed with anger. He subconsciously stretched out his hand to summon a long sword from his mind. "Cut it!" Arbor roared and ordered expressionlessly. The fleeting swan dagger jumped out with a whoosh and fiercely collided with Muld's sword with a thunderous momentum. By the waist, cut off. The entire long sword had no power to resist and was directly cut into 2 at the waist. All the Mu family's disciples gasped. He could only watch helplessly as Muda's consciousness was damaged, and he spat out blood. This was his second impression of the little crown princess. Cold-blooded, Berserk Arbor made a prompt decision to pursue and attack. He immediately flew up and arrived in front of Muld again. Then, he smashed his ferrule towards Muld's head. "Junior, you dare?" Mu Jingxing's eyes widened. Just as he was about to rush forward, Grandpa Mu stopped him. Grandpa Mu sighed. He only lightly flicked his sleeve and stabilized the little fellow's ferrule. Emolien's eyes turned cold. She flashed to Arbor's side and coldly looked at Grandpa Mu. "Grandpa, it's best if you don't interfere in this matter. Otherwise, this crown prince will make your whole family suffer." Grandpa Mu sighed again. "I'm old. I can't bear to see the juniors killing each other in front of me. Jojo, for Grandpa's sake, can you spare him this time?" "Compensation. Grandpa will compensate you." Emolien silently lowered her eyes. Grandpa Moo seemed to have investigated his JoJo quite a bit. The 8th watch ended. Chapter 26-27. Grandpa will compensate you according to the list from before. The old man suddenly said. Mu Jingrue's feet slipped, and he almost fell to the ground. My father, the moment you spoke up, you sold out the Mu clan once again. Da is a fool. Don't lower yourself to his level. The old man said again. If he wasn't a fool, why would he jump out at this time and be the bird that stuck its head out? The old man was very clear on who was instigating from behind. His cold eyes indifferently swept over the Mu family's juniors. Everyone couldn't help but lower their heads. Chow chow. The old man called out again. He spoke rudely and insulted my mother in front of everyone just now. Chow Mu gazed coldly at the old man. Do you think that a mere batch of supplies will be able to let this matter pass so easily? In your eyes, who am I, and who is my mother? This person publicly insulted the crown princess mother. In his eyes, who is the crown princess, and who is the crown prince? Arbor's calm and indifferent voice clearly fell into everyone's ears. Mutsong's breathing slightly choked, and he had a bad premonition. At this moment, he also felt an extreme headache. This child, Muda, was second brother's child. He was born slow-witted, and he didn't learn the slightest bit of second brother's shrewdness. This time, he had really dug a pit for himself. Even if everyone in this world looks down on my mother, even if everyone stands on the opposite side of my mother, even if there's no one to protect her, I will also protect her at all costs. Mu Xingqian stood behind his father. For some reason, tears inexplicably rolled down his cheeks as he looked at this abnormally calm and cold little girl. He really had a lot of things he wanted to say to her. He really wanted to tell her that it was impossible for her to be alone. Big Brother would protect her. Big Brother meant what he said. Old man Mu fell silent. Arbor directly pulled out a dagger and threw it at Muda's feet with a clang. His voice revealed a trace of desolate loneliness and boundless indifference. Take your own life, lest this crown princess does it herself. There wasn't a trace of sound at the scene. Even the sound of everyone's breathing became weaker. He wasn't sure what he was feeling right now. He only felt that when the little girl's eyes, which were like ice pearls in a cold pond, looked at him, it was as if there were ice shards moving in her eyes. Mulder's conscience had been damaged since just now. At this moment, he was looking at Arbor with a dejected expression. He was feeling quite upset. At the side, Mu Jingxing's eyes widened as he suddenly exclaimed, Mu Qiao, don't go overboard. Mu Qiao? Qiao Mu's head turned bit by bit, and her flickering eyes stared coldly at the Mu family's second uncle. Who are you calling? You. Mu Jingxing was infuriated. Didn't you make such a big fuss just to return to the Mu family grandly? Since that was the case, what's wrong with calling you Mu Qiao? Mu Qiao. Mu Qiao. Qiao Mu muttered these two words coldly as she slowly inched forward. Everyone felt that when she spoke these two words, her expression seemed to be especially mocking, especially sarcastic, and the space between her brows actually contained a faint sense of desolation and coldness. It was pitiful and terrifying. In her previous life, she actually didn't even know this name until her death. From a day she found out about her identity, the two words Mu Qiao had already been abandoned by her. She didn't need it. Chapter 26-28. She didn't return to the Mu residence this time because she wished so much to go back and regain that ridiculous kinship and kindness. It was because she wanted to go back and find out the truth. She couldn't let her mother die without knowing the truth. She couldn't let herself die without knowing the truth in her previous life. She wanted to peel away the layers of fog in front of her and find the most primitive truth. So, Mu Qiao? These two words had long been discarded by her. Her surname was Qiao. As long as her surname was Qiao, her surname would be Qiao for life. Ha 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 ha. How ironic. In her previous life, when she was alone and helpless and struggling on the verge of death, she wanted so much to have a family and a strong backing that could protect her warmly. The little girl suddenly threw her head back and laughed out loud. Her laughter was cold and sarcastic. But now, she already had Lien. She had a sect, a master, an adoptive father and mother, and a younger brother and sister. She really didn't need anything else. She hugged Long Chiyun's memorial tablet and slowly walked forward. Like a wisp of flowing cloud, it also seemed like a thin piece of snow crystal. Just like this, it was empty and unhurried. Sorrow and coldness gently brushed past everyone's hearts. Jojo was very unhappy. Yin's heart twisted tightly, as if it was being scratched by a cat. His footsteps moved slightly, and his eyes darkened. For a moment, he just wanted to pounce over and hug this little girl tightly to comfort her. However, he still managed to control himself. He firmly suppressed the desire to embrace her. Jojo, old Master Mu's heart trembled slightly, and he softly called out to her. Erda was insensible and insulted your mother. He was wrong, but he didn't deserve to die. Can you spare his life? Father, Mu Jingxing angrily said. Erda merely scolded her out of spite. How did it escalate to the level of life and death? Shut up. Old Master Mu angrily glared at Mu Jingxing, who was causing trouble, and continued. Jojo, Grandpa is willing to compensate you double, and I'll make Erda kneel in the ancestral hall for a month until you forgive him. Xiao Mu coldly turned around and gazed at old Master Mu with a bone-chilling gaze. She expressionlessly declared, I will never forgive him. It doesn't matter if he didn't mean what he said, or if he was brainlessly ordered by someone else. Since he dared to insult my mother in broad daylight, he must pay the price in blood. From the day I walked out of hell, I told myself, in this lifetime, no one can climb on top of Arbor's head and behave atrociously. No one can make me smile and forgive him after slapping me in the face. You can't, not even your whole family. I swore to Deng Hua that as long as I want to protect someone, even if all the gods and Buddhas are my enemies, I will not flinch. I'll kill whoever blocks my way. The entire area in front of Lisheng Gate was completely silent. Arbor slightly shook his wrist, and a small porcelain bottle rolled to Mulder's feet. Since you can't speak, then never speak. Be a mute for the rest of your life, or die. Choose one. Mulder raised his head to look at old Master Mu, whose eyes were slightly closed. He shakily reached out to grab the porcelain bottle on the ground and looked at his father, Mu Jingxing, for help. Big brother. Father. Mu Jingxing then looked at Mu Jingfeng and Mu Tsang. Mu Jingfeng's expression was somewhat absent-minded. Mu Tsang let out a long sigh. Chapter 26-29. Arbor's gaze was cold as she raised her head to glance at the old man. She saw that the old man was looking at her with sparkling eyes without the slightest bit of hostility. She could sense whether he was sincere or not. This child had been a very sensitive person since she was young, so she could see through people's hearts more clearly than anyone else. At least from her point of view, the old man was still somewhat sincere. Jojo. Yin walked to her side and sighed in relief before reaching out to hold her small hand. In short, no one could bully his Jojo if Mu Tsang, this old man, really didn't know how to appreciate favors. He definitely wouldn't let the old man off so easily. Arbor nodded her small head at him, indicating that she was fine and for him to set his mind at ease. Yin then gently released her small hand, and his expression relaxed slightly as he retreated a few steps back. This time, it was the old man's turn to breathe a sigh of relief. Earlier, Prince Mo's aura was truly too stifling when he came over. Neither of these two were to be trifled with. Others might not have noticed, but the old man did. Ever since the little fellow made a move, the entire scene had sunk into a deathly silence. It was practically possible to hear a pin drop. Which of the Mu family's juniors had this kind of aura? The little fellow's gaze truly made one's heart feel very heavy. Mu Jingfeng finally found his dry voice and stepped forward to ask, "Why would your mother?" Arbor didn't even look at him as she coldly stared at Muda. "Do you need me to find someone to help you?" Muda shuddered. At this moment, he was already filled with regret. "No one can save you." Arbor coldly threw down this sentence. her gaze sweeping over Hui Feng and the others. Since this coward doesn't dare to make a move himself, you guys help him. Yes. Mu Qiao, you shut up. Arbor abruptly turned around and glared at second Uncle Mu, who had shouted her name. Don't change my name without my permission. I'm Arbor. I'll be using this name for the rest of my life. You don't have the right to change it. Mu Jingxing's heart actually shrunk slightly from the little girl's pitch-black eyes that resembled icy pearls. What's the matter with your mother? Mu Jingfeng could not help but ask. Xiao Mu turned around and cast her father a bone-chilling, shallow, and frigid gaze. Mu Jingfeng felt as if he had been stabbed by this gaze, and his entire body trembled. She looked so much like that woman. The same arrogance, and the same disdain for him. The anger in his chest suddenly seemed to explode as it surged up violently. Arbor, what's with that look? Did you not hear what I asked you? Master. Mu Qingya's eyelids twitched, and she hurriedly reached out to grab Mu Jingfeng's arm. She tugged hard and whispered, What are you doing? What a hypocrite. Arbor coldly spat out a few words, a trace of disdain in his eyes, and ordered, Let him eat. Without another word, Hui Feng and the others grabbed Muda's arm and forced him to swallow the pill in the bottle. Mu Jingxing wanted to step forward to stop them, but was stopped by Mu Tsang. The elderly man sighed wearily. Don't complicate matters anymore. Cough, 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 cough. Muda clutched his throat in horror and coughed desperately, as if he wanted to spit out that pill. However, that pill melted in his mouth and had long been digested to God knows where. Chapter 2630. Muda opened his mouth, but suddenly realized that he had lost his voice. He looked at his father, Mu Jingxing, with a flustered expression. He was truly afraid and truly regretful. If he had known earlier that the little fiend's methods were so vicious, he would not have stood out in front of the Mu family's children and acted as the bird that stood out. He wanted to suppress the little lady's spirit, but unexpectedly, he was suppressed to the point that he could not breathe. Mu Jingfeng stood at the side. He was so angered by the little lady's words that he could not breathe properly. His emotions were on a roller coaster ride. Arbor directly hugged Long Chuyun's memorial tablet and quickened his footsteps toward the Mu family's residence. Mu Jingfeng followed a few steps behind and angrily roared, You unfilial daughter, stop right there. Speak. Why did she die? Arbor abruptly turned around and mockingly stared at Mu Jingfeng. Why did she die? You don't know? Since you don't know, then don't ever know in this lifetime. Mu Jingfeng's heart was stifled. His stifled emotions nearly caused him to be unable to breathe smoothly. You've already retreated from her life long ago. You don't have the right to know anything about her. You. Mu Jingfeng angrily glared at him. I don't need your fake affection and concern. Give your fake feelings to those who need them. Arbor abruptly raised his voice and angrily roared, drowning out the words that Mu Jingfeng wanted to say. That pair of pitch-black eyes coldly stared at him, and his voice was so cold and emotionless that it seemed to have been fished out from the other side of the Yellow Springs. As a husband, you can't even protect your own wife. As a father, you haven't fulfilled the slightest bit of a father's duty. As a man, you can't even protect a woman. As the head of the Mu family, a 1,000-year-old family, you don't even know when and where your wife died? Why did she die? Or who killed her? You don't even know? What right do you have to question me? What right do you have to stand here and shout at me? You're so laughable. Arbor, watch your words and attitude. You can. Arbor sternly shouted, drowning out Mu Jingfeng's voice. Arbor pointed a finger at him, his pitch-black almond eyes wide as he pressed on. Heaven and earth above, the sun and moon are shining. Mu Jingfeng, do you dare to swear in the name of the Mu family's ancestors that you've never done anything to let her down in this lifetime? Do you dare to kneel in front of the ancestors of the Mu family and tell them that you have the slightest bit of benevolence, righteousness, and love for this daughter of yours? You didn't. The entire Lusheng sect, both inside and outside, was suppressed by a heavy atmosphere. Everyone lowered their heads, not daring to raise their heads to look at the patriarch's deflated appearance. If you had the slightest bit of pity for me, the person I saw on Seekong Planet wouldn't have been Mu Jingruwei, but you. If you have even the slightest bit of fatherly love for me." Arbor suddenly smiled, the coldness in his smile reaching deep into his eyes. Perhaps she tilted her head, and her gaze seemed to be looking through him into the distance. "You will be like a ray of starlight when that person is at his loneliest and most helpless. You will give that person a little bit of light. Even if it's just a little." Mu Jingfeng was speechless. However, Arbor coldly turned around and continued to carry his mother's memorial tablet forward. Prince Mo's heart had long ached terribly. What he couldn't bear to see the most was Jojo's cold and lonely gaze, as if her body was here, but her heart was far away. It was as if he wouldn't be able to hold onto the little lady in the next second. Chapter 2631. Emolien floated to Arbor's side and reached out to hold her small hand, wrapping it in a warm embrace. "Jojo, I'll go back with you. We'll face it together, no matter what." Arbor retracted her misty gaze and glanced back at him. The corners of her lips curled up as she tried her best to give him a smile. Emolien's heart ached as he watched. He held her small hand tightly and said softly, "You don't have to force yourself. No matter if you laugh or cry, I'll accept all of your emotions. What I want to see is the real Jojo. Don't force a smile in front of me. I won't bear to." Prince Emo reached out to gently caress her small face. Arbor blinked and nodded. Prince Emo reached out to take the memorial tablet in her arms and said softly, "Count me in as the one protecting our mother. Mother, thank you for giving birth to Jojo. Thank you for bestowing me with such a good Jojo. No matter what happens in the past, present, or future, I'll always be by Jojo's side to take care of her, protect her, and accompany her. I'll never leave her. Mother, you can rest assured." Arbor glanced at him and looked at the man beside her, who was as graceful as a startled swan. He held his mother's memorial tablet and muttered something as he walked. She couldn't help but want to cry and laugh at the same time. What was she afraid of? The most difficult moment was already over. The future would only get better and better. What wasn't good would only be enemies. Behind her, Mutsang's heart sank a little. He brought Mu Jingfeng and the other children, as well as the thousands of Mu family disciples, and followed the little fellow's footsteps. This time, Changle Street really boiled over. Although they didn't see the scene in front of Lusheng Gate, everyone clearly saw the scene of His Highness the Crown Prince holding the little Crown Princess's hand and slowly walking over while holding the memorial tablet. The Crown Prince? The Crown Prince actually held the little Crown Princess's hand and sent the Crown Princess's mother's memorial tablet back to the Mu family together? For a moment, the entire imperial capital was in an uproar. Everyone rushed to spread the news. Those who were there to watch the show sighed with emotion. Who said that His Highness the Crown Prince brought the little Crown Princess back from the Lower Star region for fun. Who said that after the Crown Prince returned to the imperial capital, he would sooner or later kick this unpresentable Crown Princess away. Rumors, rumors, rumors. His Highness the Crown Prince clearly valued this Crown Princess more than anyone else. Looking at the degree of rarity in front of him, it was clear that he was crying out in pain as if he had obtained a treasure. It had to be said that they really looked like a pair of celestial immortals. Who said they weren't compatible? Both of them were dressed in plain white robes and had fine black hair. They held hands as they walked over. Her beauty was unparalleled throughout the ages. She's in crown to cover the capital. This was simply to match for them. The Crown Prince and the Crown Princess's outstanding appearance, in addition to their gazes, lingered with shallow feelings. This was simply too much for single people the commoners on the street couldn't help but cheer. The Crown Prince held the little Crown Princess's hand and slowly walked through Changle Street. The commoners along the street couldn't help but kneel down and greet the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess. The two held hands as they walked through the street. They looked at each other and smiled faintly. Needless to say, with their looks and bearing, they inadvertently gained countless fans along the way. The Crown Prince and the Crown Princess are simply too compatible. Alas, this makes me believe what the storybooks say. What does it mean to have the bearing of a phoenix and the bearing of a phoenix? Chapter 2632. Wherever the two of them passed, words like this could be heard endlessly. Prince Imo was very happy to hear it. Like he said, the commoners had good taste. He was the most compatible with Jojo, the most compatible. In a private room on the second floor of Kaidai Pavilion, a pair of dark green eyes were coldly looking at the two people passing by on Changle Street. He just coldly and silently looked at them. Even though he did not show his emotions, the fingers holding the teacup were tightly curled. In front of Chin Xian's eyes, there seemed to be a dim yellow painting that flashed by. He saw the little person in the painting dressed in red being led out by the matron of honor. Her head was lowered and a little round chin was revealed. He saw himself looking at that person with a faint smile. His heart was filled with happiness and satisfaction. He saw himself holding the little person's hand. He saw himself holding her hand as they walked step by step to the front of the wedding hall. It was his. His breathing suddenly became irregular, sometimes high and sometimes low, as if something in his chest was about to explode. It was like there was a terrifying hand that was tightly holding his heart. Bit by bit, it was going to pull him into the abyss. Wrong, it was all wrong. Everything was wrong. It shouldn't be like this. This wasn't how life was supposed to develop, was it? That little person clearly belonged to him. Why was she being held in another person's hand? He shook his head heavily and suddenly stood to sweep away the cup in front of him. He rushed to the window. Second brother, what are you doing? Qin Xian, who had a melancholy expression, was frightened by his second brother's large movement. He quickly stood to block the window. Go away. Qin Xian pushed him aside. Below, Crown Prince Imo, who was passing by Kaidai Pavilion's entrance, seemed to have sensed something. He abruptly raised his head and just so happened to meet Qin Xian's malicious gaze. The Crown Prince furrowed his brows and his hand unconsciously tightened. Qin Xian's two hands tightly gripped the wooden window frame. His eyes seemed to shoot out sharp arrows and poisonous light. He wanted to kill him. Kill this person and take back everything that belonged to him. Let everything return to the right track. Arbor was about to look up when the Crown Prince suddenly grabbed his hand. He didn't even have time to look up before the Crown Prince dragged him past Kaidai Brothel. Prince, there's no need to look at unrelated people. Qin Xian's fingers turned white as she gripped the window frame tightly. She could hear the raging anger in her heart. The pain in his heart was unbearable, as if it had exploded. He didn't know what was going on, but it seemed like a strange memory would surface every once in a while. Every time she saw Jojo, as long as she saw Jojo, there would always be some memories that didn't belong to her, yet seemed to belong to her, silently floating to the surface. Jojo, who are you? What is my relationship with you? Qin Xian carefully waved his hand in front of him. Second brother, what's wrong? When we were on Seacone Planet, didn't you already know that little Jojo was married? Qin Xian said regretfully, the little girl is very good, but she already has feelings for someone else. You shouldn't pester her anymore. Qin Xian glanced at him coldly. This part of your life is wrong. Qin Xian felt that there was an abnormal light flowing in his second brother's eyes when he said this. He gave off a somewhat sinister and scary feeling. Chapter 2633. In that instant, he was like a malicious ghost that had crawled up from the Yellow Springs, causing one's heart to tighten. A Qin Xian reflexively looked at the ground. Second brother had a shadow strangely. Why did he suddenly think that his second brother was a malicious spirit? Eldest young Sir Qin lowered his eyes speechlessly. When he looked up again, he saw that his second brother had already left the window and exited the Kaidai veranda. The Mu estate located on the western side of the imperial capital in the suburbs. It was surrounded by Wintermoon Mountain Forest, and the surrounding mountains were almost all the Mu estate's cultivation grounds. Of course, the Mu estate was actually only an extremely small piece of land in the entire imperial capital. At this moment, the Mu estate's main gate was wide open, and so was the middle gate. Everyone in the Mu estate, young and old, stood silently on both sides of the road, welcoming the crown prince and his wife inside with complicated expressions. Today's events on Changal Avenue and at Lusheng Gate had a huge impact on the hearts of the Mu family's younger generation. This crown princess was actually the true eldest miss of the Mu estate, right? But now, the title of eldest miss had already been taken by Miss Rochuan. According to her age, the crown princess should have been the second miss, but the title of second miss had also been taken by Miss Ruyan. Speaking of which, the crown princess's situation in the Mu estate was truly a bit awkward. Since the crown princess was the crown princess, she had to be addressed as such at home. Arbor and the crown prince walked hand in hand through the Mu estate's grand gates and were led to the ancestral hall. The largest area in the northeast of the Mu estate was the disciples' resting area, while the core members of the Mu family were arranged to rest in the southeast inner court. There were many doors separating the two areas, and ordinary disciples couldn't enter the inner court at all. The west was the area for refining pills and forging weapons. The south practice field was where the clan's disciples practiced, as well as rows of sealed rooms for seclusion. The north was the conference hall. The ancestral hall was located at the end of the north, far from the main building and buried deep in the mountain forest. A stream surrounded the door, and it was a place of excellent feng shui. The steward respectfully led the crown prince and crown princess to the ancestral hall, not daring to act rashly. When they arrived in front of the ancestral hall, they subconsciously looked back at the old patriarch Mutsong. The door of the ancestral hall was already open. Arbor took Long Chiyun's memorial tablet from Mo Lien and nodded at her with pursed lips. He then turned around and strode into the ancestral hall. The door of the ancestral hall closed with a creak. Arbor looked coldly at the incense burning in front of him. There were many memorial tablets placed in front of him. Arbor glanced at them one by one, and his gaze fell on the top. The name of the memorial tablet in the middle was Mu Chuyang. This should be an ancestor-level figure of the Mu family. Arbor also put his mother's memorial tablet on it, took out a clean white cloth from his inner world, and carefully wiped it. "Mother," she muttered to herself, "I will seek justice for you and help you find out the truth. I will take back the pride that belongs to you. Don't worry, my daughter will not lose." She placed her mother's memorial tablet properly, then kneeled down and respectfully kowtowed 3 times. Only then did she get up from the ground. Her back was ramrod straight, and she walked step by step to the door. She reached out and pulled open the heavy ancestral hall door. When the little girl's frail figure appeared at the door of the ancestral hall, Mu Xingqian felt his breath catch in his throat. The little girl looked at him with a calm expression, but he could inexplicably feel the turbulent waves suppressed in the bottom of her heart. Chapter 2634. Mu Xingqian was also feeling extremely stifled right now. He really wanted to run up and comfort this young lady, but in the end, he felt that his words of comfort were simply pale and powerless. Mu Jingfeng's expression was completely taut. His daughter's questioning in front of Lu Sheng's door earlier had caused him to lose all face, and a raging fury had also surfaced in his heart. The young lady before him was truly his daughter. She could still make him so angry that his insides burned. Mu Jingfeng took a deep breath and said with a cold expression, "Now that you've achieved your goal, what do you plan to do next? Qingya, has the crown prince and Zhouzhou's court been tidied up?" Mutsong directly interrupted Mu Jingfeng and turned to look at Mu Qingya. Mu Qingya hurriedly nodded and said, "Yes, yes. The Magnolia Court's court has already been tidied up and arranged properly. The crown prince and crown princess can move in at any time." Mutsong was very confident in his wife's ability to take charge of the family. He nodded upon hearing this and said to Qiao Qiao with a smile, "Qiao Qiao, since you've returned, then stay at home for a few days. Your Highness, Zhouzhou has been separated from us for many years. It's not easy for him to return home. I hope that your Highness will allow Zhouzhou to stay at home for a while." Mutsong thought of the crown prince, who was standing at the side like a great Buddha, and hurriedly said this. "All right, His Highness the Crown Prince agreed. Then, this solitude and crown princess will be troubling old clan head for the next few days. A trace of joy appeared on Mu Tsong's old face, but there was also some awkwardness between his brows. Seeing the crown prince's polite and distant words, the old man felt a little upset in his heart. It was originally the return of his granddaughter and grandson-in-law. It wasn't a matter of course for them to stay for a while. Forget it. One wouldn't become fat in one go. Even if he wanted to slowly mend his relationship with Jojo, he couldn't rush this moment. The old clan head sighed and turned to exhort Mu Qingya, keep a close eye on them. Don't let the crown prince and Jojo's court lack anything. Yes, your daughter-in-law will be careful. Don't worry, father. The elderly clan leader nodded, then turned to glance at his stoic-faced granddaughter. Jojo, you've just returned, so you still have to make arrangements with the crown prince. Once you've settled down in the Jade Orchid Garden, why don't you make a trip to grandfather's place? Arbor raised his eyelids and glanced at the old man. Seeing his eyes full of expectation, he reluctantly nodded his head. Mu Tsong immediately became happy. He nodded and said, your grandmother's health isn't good. She hasn't been able to get up all these years. When you come, Grandpa will take you to see her. Arbor tilted his head non-committally. Mu Tsong didn't say anything more to the little fellow. Seeing that she had been tired for half a day, he guessed that she must be exhausted. He hurriedly instructed the little fellow to go with the crown prince to Yulon Park to settle down. She turned to glare at the cold-faced Mu Jingfeng. Come over here. After saying that, the old man strode away with his hands behind his back. Mu Qingya smiled at Arbor. It was neither overly affectionate nor overly cold. She looked at her with clear and bright eyes and said, Jojo, I'll take you to Jade Orchid Garden. Please, your highness. Mu Qingya politely extended her hand to invite the crown prince to go first. Thus, Crown Prince Mo led the way while holding the little fellow's hand. When the two walked past Mu Xingchen, they tacitly did not even look at him. 8-night watch completed. Kai returned to normal 6-night watch. Chapter 2635. Mu Jingrui sighed and patted Mu Xingchen's shoulder. Let's go, Xingchen. The little fellow will be staying here for the next few days. We'll definitely find a chance to mend our relationship with her. Was there a chance? Mu Xingchen turned around and glanced at Mu Jingrui. Mu Jingrui smiled encouragingly at him and nodded. I'll go check on third brother, Mu Jingzhuang hurriedly said. From the start, Old Third's expression had been very off. If one were to ask who the Mu family was most affected by eldest sister-in-law's death, it would probably be Mu Jingyuan. Mu Jingzhuang thought of some past events and couldn't help but sigh heavily. Go on. Mu Jingrui nodded and watched Mu Jingzhuang leave. Meanwhile, Arbor and Mo Lien followed Mu Qingya all the way to the entrance of Yulon Court. However, the layout of the courtyard wasn't small, and the inside was indeed clean and tidy. It looked quite comfortable. An old maid was leading 7 or 8 young and beautiful maidservants. They were waiting respectfully in the courtyard. Seeing their masters enter, the old maid led the group of servant girls forward to greet them. Her etiquette was also very considerate. Mu Qingya gently said, Jojo, this is Nanny Zhou. If you need anything, just tell her. She's an old servant of the residence and knows everything. She'll definitely take care of everything for you. This old servant greets Crown Prince and Crown Princess. Prince Mo and the little Crown Princess both nodded indifferently. Following behind Zhou Mama were 4 first-class maidservants. They were fat and slim and graceful. Their names were Mei Xian, Lan Xian, Zhu Xian, and Zhu Xian. The others were all second and third-rank servant girls and didn't have many opportunities to show their faces in front of their masters. Arbor merely swept a glance at them before leading Tsaixio and Saichi inside. Mu Qingya smiled and said, The rooms have already been prepared. Jojo, come this way. Their room was the largest one on the south side. When they pushed open the door and walked in, they saw that the room was already spotless and tidy. Bedding, mattresses, tea sets, and cups were all present. It could be seen that the person who made the arrangements had put in a lot of effort. Mu Qingya smiled faintly at Arbor. Jojo, you and His Highness must be tired from the long journey. I won't disturb you any longer and will take my leave first. If there's anything else you need, just ask Jo Mama to call a servant girl over and let me know. One would not slap a smiling person. Since Mu Qingya was tactful, Xiaomu naturally would not embarrass her on the spot. She nodded and said to Mu Qingya, "Thank you." Mu Qingya's smile became even brighter. She waved her hand and said, "You don't have to be so polite with me. All right, get back to your work." From Lu. "Yes, madam." The 16 or 17-year-old girl named Song Lu hurriedly ran forward and bowed to the Crown Prince and Crown Prince Consort before hastily excusing herself with Mu Qingya. After Mu Qingya left with Song Lu and the others, Arbor turned to look at Saishio and said, "Go out and tell them that if there's nothing else, they can wait in the outer court. They're not allowed to casually enter the inner court, especially the area around the south side rooms." She naturally didn't need those miscellaneous people in her inner court. The little fellow had never been a particular person. She liked peace and quiet and didn't like so many miscellaneous people popping up in front of her. It was annoying to look at. Chapter 2636. After interacting with her for so many days, Kai Xiao and Kai Chi didn't know this little crown princess very well, but at least they had a good grasp of her temper. The crown princess's style of doing things had always been straightforward and straightforward. She just had to do as she was told. Once it was done, the crown princess was also a very generous person. When it came to rewarding people, it was really surprising. Hearing this, Kai Xiao quickly nodded and led Kai Chi out. Aunt Jing stepped forward and bowed. "This servant will also leave first." His Highness the Crown Prince nodded indifferently. Seeing that everyone had retreated and closed the door, he pulled the little fellow into his arms and hugged her tightly. "Jojo." Prince Emo hugged the little fellow and gently rubbed her body. "Don't be sad, don't be sad." Arbor raised her little head proudly. "I won't be sad for those irrelevant people." Emo Lien lowered his head and looked at her seriously. Seeing that her emotions were still stable, he smiled and nodded. "Okay." He pulled her to sit at the table and reached out to touch the teapot. Seeing that it was warm, he couldn't help but frown. He directly pushed the teapot and cups to the side of the table. The little fellow took out the teapot with spirit tea from her inner world and took out 2 white jade porcelain cups. She poured a cup of hot spirit tea for Prince Mo and herself. "Lien, drink." Jojo Sama handed it to Mo Lien. Mo Lien received it with a smile and raised his hand to drink it in one gulp. After being busy for half a day, they finally had time to sit down and drink tea. Jojo Sama half leaned on the table and took the teapot and cups that Mo Lien had pushed to the side. He opened the lid and sniffed the teapot like a kitten. "Is there a problem?" Mo Lien was startled. He reached out and hugged the little fellow onto his lap. He didn't think much of it before. He only pushed the teapot to the side because it was cold. But looking at the little fellow's actions, she definitely did not believe the Mu family at all. Jojo shook his head. "No problem. I don't think the Mu family would be that stupid. They wouldn't make it so obvious." Plotting to murder the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess was a crime punishable by the extermination of the entire family, unless the entire family didn't want to live anymore. The little fellow pursed her lips and took out a small jar of crispy peanuts from her inner world. While eating, she mumbled, "What should I do next?" Mo Yin can't help laughing. She looks down at the little girl and says, "Didn't Grandpa Mu ask you to settle down and go to him?" "Umph." Jojo's hand, which was holding the peanut jar, paused. "He asked me to look for it, so I have a look for it," Mo Yin said with a smile. "I'm guessing that the old man wants to give you some good stuff in private to comfort you." Jojo's eyes lit up. She immediately put on a reluctant look and said with a sullen face, "Well, I'll give him a chance to speak." Mo Yin almost laughed out loud. He hugged his little wife and shook her. "That's right. The old man is quite sensible." While the two of them were talking, there was a commotion at the door of the south wing. It was so loud that it was hard for them to pretend that they didn't hear it. Mo Yin creased his brows, and he met the little fellow's gaze when she raised her eyes to meet his. The Crown Prince was about to let go of his hand and pull the little fellow up, intending to go out and have a look. Unexpectedly, the door was rudely knocked open with a bang. A tall and plump young girl suddenly appeared at the door. Chapter 26:37. Seeing the situation in the room, that lass's eyes involuntarily flashed. Zhu Xian and Mei Xian, the two head lasses, went up to pull away that second-rank lass who doesn't know etiquette, and naturally saw His Highness the Crown Prince holding the little crown princess on his lap. The two couldn't help but blush, and they hurriedly retreated 2 steps outside the door. That second-rank lass, Xiaoxing, stood at the door, stuck between a rock and a hard place. She stiffened her neck and said in a hoarse voice, "Xiaoxing, GRE greets the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess." Prince Imo expressionlessly loosened his grip, pulling the little Crown Princess to stand up, his cold gaze sweeping over her. That frosty gaze really seemed like he was looking at a corpse, so cold that Xiaoxing couldn't help but shrink her neck. Flustered and exasperated, Kaixio hurried over and forcefully pushed that second-rank lass to the side. She entered the door and bowed, saying, "Master, this Mu Estate's second-rank lass truly doesn't know etiquette. Please forgive her for disturbing His Highness and Her Highness." Arbor coldly gazed at that second-rank lass. "Someone come. It's the Crown Princess." Aunt Jing hurried over with several old maids from the palace. "Throw her out. She's not allowed to appear in this court again in the future." "Yes." Aunt Jing hurriedly shouted at those old maids, pulling the little lass up and pulling her towards the door. Xiaoxing cried out in exasperation, "Your Highness the Crown Prince, Your Highness the Crown Prince, Crown Princess, what are you doing? You, let me go. I'm not from the palace. I'm from the Mu family. You can't treat me like this." Nanny Zhou coldly watched from the sidelines, looking at this disaster-seeking lass, and coldly snorted. Just now, after Ms. Kaixio came over to explain the Crown Princess's instructions, she said that in the future, if there weren't any orders, no one was allowed to enter the inner court, let alone take half a step into the southern wing. Although everyone was somewhat unconvinced, only Xiaoxing, this idiot, really dared to make a fuss on the first day. She was originally only a second-rank lass, and usually could only stay in the inner court. She definitely couldn't enter the wing. At this moment, the other maids haven't made a fuss, but she made a fuss first. Who still didn't know what she was thinking. Wasn't at all because she saw the Crown Prince's lass with the Crown Princess staying in this Yulon court. So she had some bad intentions and did everything she could to want to get close to him. However, it was a pity that the young Crown Prince Consort wasn't someone to be trifled with. With a single command, she blocked all the servant girls outside. Although everyone was gritting their teeth in anger, they weren't stupid. Who would dare to make a fuss with the Crown Prince Consort on the first day? Shut her mouth. Aunt Jing frowned. She had never seen such an ill-mannered girl. Her, crown is crown, hers are her, could be seen that the rules of the 1,000-year-old Mu family were really not that great. Hearing Aunt Jing's words, the 2 older women rolled up their sleeves and went forward. They gave Xiaoxing a slap on the left and right and directly used a dirty rag to block Xiaoxing's noisy mouth. The court instantly became much quieter. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. When Granny Zhou and the 4 head servant girls turned their heads to look at the young Crown Princess, they saw that the young lady's expression was cold and stern. Her eyes seemed to contain ice crystals as she stared coldly at Xiaoxing, causing their hearts to involuntarily tremble. "Do you want to die?" Arbor stared at her coldly. The words that came out of his mouth were extremely cold. Chapter 26:38. Little Xing's struggling figure immediately stopped, and her heart inexplicably shuddered a little. That's right, trembling. Not knowing why, hearing the little Crown Princess ask this in such a cold tone, she inexplicably felt a strong sense of fear. She was really quite scared. Associating it with the little Crown Princess's actions today, Xiaoxing's body couldn't help but slightly tremble. Her actions just now, it seemed like she was really possessed by a ghost, doing whatever she thought of. Now it seemed like she didn't even use her brain. Xiaoxing didn't dare to struggle anymore. her body softly falling to the ground. "Crown Princess, please calm down." Nanny Zhou hurriedly stepped forward, bowing to the little Crown Princess. "This second rank maid is really rude. This old servant will report this to Madam. This old servant promises that this little maid will never appear in front of the Crown Princess again." "Woo-woo!" Xiaoxing screamed, but couldn't make a sound. She now felt very, very scared. Did Nanny Zhou mean that she was going to sell her? In a clan like the Mu estate, as a second-rank servant girl, her days were much more comfortable than those young ladies from small clans outside. "How about you want to leave?" She wanted to roll and crawl to Nanny Zhou's side, and even more wanted to hug her leg and beg. But unfortunately, all of this was just her imagination. Right now, her arms are clamped down by two servants, so how could she move? Still not dragging her out? Nanny Zhou disdainfully looked at this useless trash. It was only the first day, and she was already disliked by Master to this extent. It could be seen that she was brainless and useless and would never be able to stand out in this lifetime. Prince Mo was annoyed seeing them, waving his hand, saying, "Tianjing, chase them all out." "Yes." Aunt Jing hurriedly turned her head, ordering Nanny Zhou, "Didn't you hear what His Highness the Crown Prince said? Take all these maids under you and scram out." Nanny Zhou had never been treated like this before. She was so angry that her heart was trembling, but she didn't dare to refute. Aunt Jing was someone who had been in the palace for a long time. How could she not be able to suppress an old nanny with her aura? Nanny Zhou swallowed her anger and suppressed her anger. She was embarrassed and angry. She saluted and led the group of troublesome maidservants out of the inner court. The moment she stepped out of the inner courtyard, the old mama slapped Xiaoxing's face. "Useless trash, the entire Mu family's face has been lost because of you," Nanny Zhou said hatefully. "I will tell Madam everything about you. Let Madam decide how to deal with you." The two old maids who came from the imperial palace threw her in front of Nanny Zhou and left without saying a word. At this moment, Xiaoxing was finally able to move her arms. She hurriedly took the dirty rag out of her mouth and threw herself at Zhou Mama's feet with tears and snot running down her face. She repeatedly sobbed, "Mama, Mama, this servant knows her mistake. This servant will not dare to make trouble again. Mama, please put in a good word for this servant in front of Madam." "Huh?" Nanny Zhou sneered and kicked Xiaoxing to the side without any explanation. She scolded, "You discontented slut, why don't you take a piss and look at yourself in the mirror? With your looks, you still want to seduce the crown prince." The more Nanny Zhou looked at her, the more vexed she felt. They were all humans, so how could someone be this stupid? Chapter 2639. Do you think you're a freaking fairy? Not to mention that you can't even compare to a single strand of hair on the little crown princess. Even if you can compare, you shouldn't be so straightforward if you want to stand out. Brainless idiot, just looking at her makes me angry. Nanny Zhou waved her hand, gesturing for several strong maids behind her to step forward and drag away the sobbing and begging Xiaoxing, not bothering to give that lass another glance. Zhu Xian hurriedly stepped forward and sweetly consoled Nanny Zhou. "Nanny, why get so angry with a little lass who can't even be brought to the table? Just send her out of the estate." Nanny Zhou thought about it and felt that it was true. She raised her hand to soothe her chest and turned to look at the group of maids. "I'm warning you, that little crown princess is not someone easy to deal with. You all saw Xiaoxing's end just now. If you still want to be a moth darting into a flame, then go ahead and try. Don't blame Nanny for not reminding you. The crown princess really will kill. You all should have heard of young Master's tragic end. If you don't want to live, then go ahead and provoke her. If something happens, don't say that the Mu family can't protect you." The maidservants shuddered at the same time. Then, they obediently followed Zhou Mama and retreated to the outer courtyard. After this commotion, who in the entire Mu family didn't know that something had happened in the little crown princess Jade Orchid Court again? Imperial Palace. Imperial study. When Mo Luxing received the news, it was already about 10 minutes into the night. Staring at the secret guard who came to report, Mo Luxing's mouth couldn't help but twitch. When did the Crown Prince say he would return? Reporting to your majesty. The Crown Prince didn't say anything. Mo Lushing snorted and waved his hand, saying, "You can withdraw." He held an old official's memorial, his eyes seemingly scrutinizing that memorial. Standing at the side, Hu Dequan wiped the sweat on his forehead, not daring to say anything. After a long while, Mo Lushing finally threw away the memorial in his hand and scolded angrily. "This little brat, can't he be a little more promising? Wherever his wife goes, he follows." She looked like a woman who didn't obey her husband's orders. Hu Dequan didn't dare to reply. He lowered his head and allowed the great emperor to ridicule him for a while. Then he asked someone to serve the great emperor a new cup of tea and retreated. Outside the door, eunuch who muttered to himself, "Don't blame anyone. Your Majesty, have you forgotten the time when I ran away with the Empress when I was young?" Mu Mansion Olive Garden. Ever since concubine Shi was grounded at home by Mu Jingfeng, she had a stomachache. At this moment, she was half leaning on the couch listlessly and staring at her two daughters sitting in front of her. "Mother, it's a good thing that you were grounded at home by father and didn't have to suffer that humiliation." Mu Royin clenched her fists in anger and complained, "You don't know how arrogant that little bitch is. She doesn't even care about father. Isn't that so?" Mu Royun lowered her eyes and said coldly, "Give him some color and he'll be able to open a dye house immediately. My daughters have suffered." Shi Huixin wiped her eyes with a handkerchief. Concubine mother. A woman in her 50s wearing a lined jacket quickly walked in and bowed to Shi Huixin and the two young misses before saying, "There's a commotion in Jade Orchid Court again." Jade Orchid Court? It's that crown princess residence. Nanny Zhu pursed her lips and said, "That lord really isn't someone easy to deal with." Chapter 2640. The moment she moved into Yulan Court, she chased Nanny Zhou and the rest out of the outer courtyard. Not only that, she even chased away a second-rank servant girl. That second-rank servant girl is in for it now. I heard that Madame is going to sell her off later. Shi Huixin snorted. That woman is used to being a good person in front of others. Mother, I don't understand. How can Madame be so nice to that little slut? Mu Royin asked as she twisted her fingers. That little slut really slapped her face today. Mother, think about it. That little slut brought back that slut's mother's memorial tablet in such a grand manner. Now, the entire capital knows that she's a Madame Ha, a second Madame. In the future, when she goes to the ancestral hall during festivals, she'll have to serve that woman tea. Mu Royin also nodded and said, "I also find it very strange. If it's because of that little slut's status as the crown princess, Madame shouldn't be so infuriated." You're still young. Shi Huixin snorted. First Madame is used to being a virtuous person. She also has a lot of face in front of Old Master. Old Master has praised her more than once that she's a good person and is suitable to be the matriarch of the household. Mu Royin pursed her lips in disdain. I don't believe that she's not angry. Who wouldn't be angry to be suppressed by a dead person? The three mother and daughter chatted for a while more before Nanny Zhu, who had left to gather information, ran back in after a while and said to the three mother and daughter, "It stopped. I think it's about time to stop." Shi Huixin sneered. No lives were lost, right? No. Nanny Zhu sneakily walked up and winked at Shi Huixin. This servant heard that it was the second-rank servant girl, Xiao Xing, from Yulan Court who wanted to get close to His Highness the Crown Prince. That was why she was chased out of the court by the Crown Princess. Haha, that's really impressive. Mu Royin sneered. How long does she think that she can protect His Highness the Crown Prince like he's food? What kind of status does His Highness have? Does she think that His Highness will only marry her as his first wife in this lifetime? Shi Huixin snorted and said, "Forget it. Let's not talk about that slut. Now that the Crown Prince is also living in Yulan Park, it's better for us to avoid him for now. In any case, her Magnolia Court should be very lively these few days." The corners of Shi Huixin's mouth curled up sinisterly as she sneered. Just let them fight like a swarm of bees. Mother, are we going to let her off just like that? Mu Royin tugged at Shi Huixin's arm and said indignantly, You didn't see how she treated second uncle's brother Erda today. She made brother Erda swallow the mute medicine while he was still alive, and Grandpa didn't even say a word. Mu Royan's face was full of hatred. She had a bad premonition from the bottom of her heart. She thought that Evenda from the second branch had ended up in such a miserable state after offending that little slut with just one sentence. She really didn't know what would happen to her after provoking and offending her time and time again. Don't worry, Yenur. Mother will protect you. Sure, Huaxin held Mu Royan's hand, and then Mu Royan's. Hey, you two listen to Mother. Don't provoke that woman first. In any case, Mother has a way. Mother, have you already made arrangements? Do we have people in Yulan Court? Mu Royan's eyes lit up. She hurriedly pulled Aunt Sure and asked, Mother, just tell us. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.